And I am going to ask Mr. Buse to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like the record to reflect that Trustee Alcala has joined us. She was not here at the beginning of the session, but she has now joined us, and all trustees are present. Announcements of action taken in closed session. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9, Subdivision D1. Name of case, Grijalva versus Washington Unified School District, case number CV 19-994. Information was received and discussed, and direction was given. So next is approval of the agenda. Do I have any modifications to the agenda?
Board President Wong, Human Resources will be bringing forth a revised certificated recommendation in the consent agenda.
Okay. Certificated, not classified, is that correct? Okay.
03.
So wait, so what are we doing now?
Assistant Superintendent Gonzalez is bringing a revised version that was not posted of the certificated recommendations. It's right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's in front of me.
It's 0.3.
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to remove 0.3 from consent.
Okay. So moving 0.3 from consent to action. Anything else? With that change, moving 0.3 to action, do I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Okay. Trustee Alcala moves. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Clerk Jackson. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so agenda is approved. So now we have no communications and celebrations tonight, unfortunately. We're going to move on to association reports. WSTA report, please. Mr. Buse, are you ready? Thank you.
Not too much to report this evening. We are off to a good start. We have recently elected to the executive board Brianne Donnelly as a member of the board and Akiba Gregory as vice president. And so we're moving forward and working hard, and we appreciate the relationship that we've been able to forge with the district and working on certain things together, and thank you very much. We're getting a lot of positive comments and positive support from both our superintendent and assistant superintendents as well, and look forward to continuing to work together productively. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Buse. K2, do we have anyone from CSA? No? Okay, no CSA report today, and we don't have a student report today either, so we're moving along. Now it's time for public comments. So at this time, members of the public may address the board on the topics of our board agenda in addition to topics that are under the jurisdiction of the board and are not on the agenda. Although the board by law may not take action at this meeting, the board may limit the total time of public input on any topic to 20 minutes unless it chooses to waive the item limit for a particular item. Individual speakers may be limited to 3 minutes to comment on any topic. Public comments consisting of individual charges, complaints, or derogatory remarks about any district employee are requested to be submitted in writing to the administration in accordance with the district's complaint procedure. We do recognize that for a lot of people, commenting before the board and the audience and the people watching online at home is a nerve-wracking experience. So to try to make this as easy as possible, we do ask that there not be any applause or booing or catcalling or other demonstrations to maintain a civil discourse here in the chambers. The board respects the rights of members of the public to speak to us regarding matters on the agenda and other matters within the jurisdiction of the board. However, it is important for members of the public to recognize that comments regarding students other than the speaker's own children made during public board meetings may be legally actionable as a violation of student privacy. Both state and federal law prohibit the board and others from discussing confidential student information in open session. To this end, be advised that if you reference a student's name other than your own student, you will be out of order and your comments may not be protected by the privileges that protect public speech. You could be found liable for such comments in legal proceedings. Furthermore, it is important for the public to understand that negative or derogatory comments made against the district employees or others, even those made in a public board meeting, may be actionable civil defamation. As such, the board reminds the public that the district has existing board policy that allows the public to lodge a complaint against a district employee. This policy provides a comprehensive procedure for reviewing and responding to public complaints. This process provides a more thorough opportunity to be heard than is allowed under the open meeting law that governs this meeting. Ms. Danny Langford, can I invite you to the podium?
Good evening. In attending most of the facility master plan meeting thingies, sorry, I'm really tired, I really am sad about the condition of a lot of the campuses. And the ones that I haven't been to for the meetings, I've been driving around looking, and it just saddens me because I've never seen them in such poor condition, whether it's the weeds or the campus buildings themselves. I would like to also say that 4 o'clock is far too early to get parents there. If you seriously want parents there, 4 to 6:30 is a very difficult time. And obviously, people aren't coming to most of the events because that's a hard time. I would like to commend, and I think he needs to be commended hugely, the principal at Elkhorn. He has done a phenomenal job at whatever community forum or event. He works it. Maybe he should train other principals and share with them and share with you guys or whoever what he's doing that gets his parents there, because he gets that involvement, and that's amazing, and he's awesome, and I just think the world of him. Also, to have the end result of that report be the week before Christmas, or frankly, any time in December, makes the community, not just me, people reach out to me left and right, think you really don't care what they have to say, and that you're having it revealed at a time that's one of the busiest times for most families in the community. So I just ask, maybe delay it till January to do the final result of it or whatever. And I also do want to say the people that are doing the events, meetings, whatever you want to call them themselves, they're so kind, they're so good, and I just want to say that. Thank you.
Okay. There are no other public comments at this time, so moving on to information and discussion items. Can I invite Dr. Tori Nguyen up to talk about the transformative justice in education presentation, or to share with us?
So good evening. Thank you for this time. Actually, how much time do I have?
As much as you want.
Okay, that's great. So I want to thank the board for just allowing me the time to talk to you about this partnership with TJE and Washington Unified. I want to thank Superintendent Linda Luna for just allowing this partnership to happen. So my name is Tori Nguyen. I am a professor at UC Davis. I am the executive director of the Transformative Justice in Education Center. And I am here tonight to share with you what our center is all about and how this partnership would take place. So Maisha, who is the faculty director of TJE, and she's pictured right next to me, and that's when I had a haircut and my beard wasn't as long, but she's the co-director of the center, and Maisha is actually from Sacramento area. She is a professor, the chancellor's professor, leadership professor at UC Davis. We came to Sacramento in 2016 at UC Davis to open up the Center Transformative Justice in Education because of all places, Sacramento region was been overlooked, and that includes West Sacramento. So from the I-80 all the way from Vallejo, you take it, the I-80 all the way to the 5 down to Stockton. A lot of research has been done in the Bay Area, in LA, but when you get to the Sacramento region, a lot of universities aren't conducting research, aren't trying to figure out ways to improve the quality of education. So instead of going to the Bay Area, we decided to go to UC Davis. Maisha graduated from UC Davis, got her teaching credential at Sac State, got her PhD from Berkeley, and also was a teacher in Sacramento. Teacher credentials from Sac State?
Sac State,
Sac
Sac State
State,
instructor, Berkeley grad,
Berkeley grad, alum, Sac State.
Davis.
Davis. So you already know this is a Sacramento family, Sac State related, UC Davis connections. And so it's good to be back. And so our center, what is the purpose of our center? So TJE, what is TJE? So in order to be at the university and in order to be a center, you have to conduct research. And when you conduct research, you have to do it with integrity. And our center is the first center at a Research One university to conduct research around restorative justice. So the first center in the US, not UCLA, not NYU, not Harvard, but UC Davis. Transform justice in education. Our goal is to work with pre-service teachers around restorative justice, not just restorative justice, but also humanizing research. Because a lot of times when individuals and researchers go into schools, into communities, they conduct research, but they don't build relationships with those communities. And so for us, part of what we do is humanizing research. We cultivate relationships, we get to know the community, and we try to create sustainable relationships. And also with pre-service teachers, what's important, teachers who graduate from UC Davis or UC Berkeley, if we have a partnership with those schools of education, we try to train them in restorative justice. So instead of the school district being responsible, it's good to have teachers who are already trained. Lastly, build community and extend opportunities. So the extending opportunities is important. A lot of times there's a lot of talent at these universities. Sometimes they stay in this bubble that we call UC Davis, and they don't get out to West Sacramento, they don't get out to Sacramento, they don't get out to Yolo County. So we want to create these opportunities for students. So that's TJE. That's our Chancellor May, and these are some of our graduate students, our undergrads. Part of restorative justice is circles. So when you are practicing restorative justice, and I like to use the word restorative justice and not restorative practice, restorative justice, part of it is sitting in a circle. So for us, we were able to get the Chancellor of UC Davis to sit in a circle with us. Busy schedule, everything has to be timed out. He has his talking points, but in this situation, he had no talking points. He gave us an hour and a half. The focus was not on him. He was able to understand the students, the faculty, and staff. There were around 25 individuals in there. He was able to learn more about his community. So I love to share that picture just because even the Chancellor at UC Davis took the time to be part of the circle. Our next step is to get the Chancellor to be trained in restorative justice. I'm gonna go through the slide real quickly, why TJE. There's a crisis in school discipline and punishment, but that's not our purpose. We want to improve K-12 teaching to be more inclusive, engaging, and restoring. So a lot of times when people talk about restorative justice, they don't include the pedagogy of restorative justice. It's a practice, but they don't include what does it look like to be in a classroom as a teacher, as an educator. And then we want to support and build community at the college and the university campuses, but most importantly, bridge between research and practice. As a research center, it's important for us to do research, but at the same time, it's important for us to understand the practice. Oops. So what do? We work with schools and teachers. So that's why we're here today, working with schools. And our partnership, I will explain. So a lot of times people talk about restorative justice. As a matter of fact, today, to the last 2 days, I was part of a retreat. We received funding from the California Endowment to look at 14 school districts across the state of California, looking at 20 schools to figure out campus and school climate. And we have this matrix, and we were trying to figure out how people are defining restorative justice. So some people call it restorative justice, restorative practices, and it was all over the map, right? So what I can tell you restorative justice is not. It's not an alternative to punishment. It's not a program. It's not letting people off the hook easy. What it is a paradigm shift. It's a mindset, the way we look at each other, the way we look at our community, the way we look at students, the way teachers look at students, the way students look at teachers. It's an opportunity and invitation to belong and sense of purpose, accountability at its highest form. Sophia Davis, who's started Our Joy in the Bay Area, she talks about the purpose of Our Joy, restorative justice, is to repair the harm caused to the whole of the web, restoring relationships to move into a brighter future. Community building, restoring the harm. We like to focus on the community building. And Maisha, she has a book called Justice on Both Sides. It was published with Harvard Press, came out in 2018. It's doing very well. This is the pillar of our center. And so in Justice on Both Sides, Viola, she says, restorative justice is like you're restoring an issue and it's justice on both sides. And they come to that agreement that is what's going to happen. So restorative justice is justice on both sides, right? Now, what's confusing about TJE, we talk about restorative justice, but we also have this term called transformative justice. So transformative justice is looking at the inherent issues in our society, social, economic, political. Because if you're talking about schools, if you're talking about health, whatever you're talking about, if you don't get to the bottom line of these economic, social, and political wrongdoings, you can't address the harm to our students, to our families, to our communities. So we like to use the term transformative justice. And why that's important is history matters, race matters, justice matters, and language matters. This is our pedagogy. So when we talk about restorative justice, we talk about the history. For example, if we're talking about Washington Unified, we're talking about West Sacramento. What is the history of West Sacramento? Let's talk about the history 50 years ago. Let's talk about the history last 10 years, last 5 years. West Sacramento has changed greatly in the last 50 years, right? So let's respect the history of the folks who were here 50 years ago. Let's look at the history of the folks who were here from the beginning of time, indigenous folks. Let's respect the history of the farmers. Let's respect the history of the new folks, right? So what is the history of Washington Unified as well, right? It has changed. The demographics have changed. So teachers, educators, custodians, bus drivers, students, they need to know the history of Washington Unified. Race matters. So when we talk about race, it's the elephant in the room. If we're not talking about race, we're really not talking about some of our issues. So race matters. When you're looking at a school district, we always see the data around Black and brown indigenous students. How can we talk about race in a way that everyone can understand? They may not agree, but we also have to talk about it. Justice matters. Justice for whom? Who administers justice? How has justice been received by the community? And language matters, which is really important. How are we talking about our kids? At risk, free and reduced, lunch, achievement gap, talking about the families. So as educators, if we look at our communities through this paradigm, through this pedagogical stances, we begin to understand our community. But it's also important for our students. Students, as they are in circles and they have this tool, it allows them to understand their community. Transformative justice teaching and learning, that's important for us. Transformative justice teaching educators, it's about how we confront race, class, privilege, and oppression, and our personal narratives. So all of us have a personal story, right? Sometimes we don't have the opportunity to share our story. So as a board, when was the last time you all had the opportunity to talk about who you are and why you're here? When was the last time you had an opportunity to get to know your colleagues, right? For us, with restorative justice, our goal is to first learn about Washington Unified. Unlike other restorative justice trainers, we don't consider ourselves trainers. We're researchers and practitioners. The first thing we want to do is come in for the first 4 to 5 months to visit schools, to talk to students, to talk to families, to talk to teachers, to talk to the board, to hold focus groups, to understand what it is that you guys, how you see school climate, how you see community, how you perceive education, school for whom, what is the purpose of education. We need to know who you are before we can even begin to start training before we can even begin to sit in circles with each other and build community. And so that's the first thing we will do. We want to know about you because it's easy for us to come in and have everybody be trained, but we want to take the time to know the city, the community, and the school district. I like to show these pictures. This is what it's all about. We had a convening 2 years ago. Over 30 scholars from throughout the country, educators, principals, got together in Davis to talk about what does restorative justice look like in the classroom as scholars, as educators, not as a practice. How can we use restorative justice in science? How can we use restorative justice in math? How can we use restorative justice in chemistry? And not just as a activity before. So it was interesting to have scientists, folks from math come together. Erica Bullock, she's at the University of Wisconsin. She's all in. She wrote several articles with us. And then also our students at UC Davis. We have students who started restorative justice in Davis as well as Solano College. And that's our big circle. Our big circle of 30 individuals. It took 3 hours just to go through 2 questions. But believe it or not, afterwards everybody felt that they learned something about each other that they didn't know. So for our partnership with Washington Unified, I'm excited just because UC Davis is right down the street. A lot of times, like I said, we look towards the Bay Area, but what about our neighbor? How can not only, it's not about this partnership only, but it's also about what's to come. Graduate students, undergrads, how can we introduce Washington Unified to our students at UC Davis? And that's transformative justice in education. Maisha, she's not here today because since she's my wife, she has the kids at golf. And so we have to, since we work together, we have to figure it out with the schedule. But she will be involved as well as our graduate students. So if you have any questions about restorative justice, about TJE, about the partnership, I would love to answer any questions you may have.
Vice President Pizarro. Anybody have? Trustee Kirby Gonzalez.
I didn't think I'd be first. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited about this and appreciate everything that you have to share. And thank you to my colleagues on the board, too, who also recommended you. And I'm so glad that we have a district where our teachers union has been asking for more work in this area. Our students, when we meet with them, have been asking for more work in this area. And so I think that it's everybody is in, which I'm really excited about. My questions are in terms of, and I was so glad that you brought up classified staff as well when you were talking through this. So can you tell me what this looks like? Because I think of our families when they've come to a school, the first place they go is in that office and in the room. And so what does this look like in terms of including everyone? Or is your lens right now teachers? Or what does that look like is what I'm wondering.
So the first thing we start off is, the first question, a lot of folks talk about their restorative justice school. Our question is, have your administrators, your faculty, your staff, your teachers, everybody, have they been trained? Now, it's impossible to train everybody in a year or 2 years, right? Have the board been trained, right? So we want to include everyone. And so I talked to the superintendent, and she understands the importance. She was just like, bus drivers, whoever can be included. Now, it depends on how many, but we want to invite everybody to be part of the circle. Just like you saw Chancellor May, we have faculty, we have staff, because a lot of times at a university you have faculty and staff, right? And they have different roles and there's sometimes tension. We wanted everyone to come together. So our goal here with Washington Unified is to bring classified and teachers together. But I don't know what barriers exist, but it'd be great for everyone to come together.
Okay. And I think there's a lot of power in when I was looking at the school sites of having, and I know time and capacity and transportation all are there too, but in having school sites together, because there are school sites families going through this training, but I also think that there are opportunities maybe, and so I'm wondering what you think, to sometimes have staffs work together, have two different staffs in a room, because sometimes there are perceptions that one staff might have of what their challenges are that aren't the same as somebody else. And I think that, have you ever done anything like that too, or is this really site-specific, I guess?
Having different staff. We have, but it's been at the university level. We work with St. Paul School District. We work with Madison School District. This is our first opportunity to work with a school district. Oh, well, we did Natomas. We did some work with Natomas, but that was just teachers. But in Madison, we have done some work with staff and teachers. But a lot of time, the focus has been on teachers, just because that has been the requirement. But for us, as we have learned in the past, we need everyone in the room if it's possible, right? And I talked to the superintendent about this. The bus driver is the first point of contact with the student. Now, if the bus driver has been trained in restorative justice and understands that they're part of the solution, before that person goes into the classroom, the bus driver can say, I want you to have a good day. When you get back on the bus, tell me you have a good day. He or she, they will go into the classroom, come back, and what happens is the bus driver will hold that student accountable. Yeah. But the bus driver first has to feel part of the community. And the only way that bus driver can be part of the community is if that bus driver is truly part of the community. And people know the bus driver just not as a bus driver, but by his or her or their name.
Thank you. Yes. Sorry, I was distracted by my preschool teacher. And then the very last question I have is as you come in as a researcher, what would maybe be our researcher or data points as a pre and a post? Is there something that you're thinking about in that way of what we could look at around data?
So the thing about our center is that we are a research center, but we also provide training.
Okay.
Right? And so research is completely not different, but as far as the training. So we can work with the superintendent and come around and figure out through a qualitative lens of some of the, like when we do the first 6 months of going into the schools and doing interviews and learning and observations, we can use that data to inform and to pass it back. So most recently, we did some site visits in Sacramento Unified, and we have like a case study that's like 45 pages. And actually, the two schools that we looked at are doing really, really well compared to the rest of the country. Not the country, but the state. And but that's because we did a qualitative a study around that. But with this training, because we have 6 months or 5 months, we can do that and provide 3-page, 4-page report to help inform your next steps.
Great. That'd be great. Thank you.
Vice President Pizzotti, you had a question?
Yeah, well, I was really glad to hear you say that the trustees can also participate in that, because that was one of my questions earlier on.
When we adopted that.
When we adopted this. The other thing is, I was looking through this, there's going to be focus groups.
Yes.
And is that going to be community participation?
Yes.
As well as parents and everybody else? The focus groups means everybody, because this is a pretty small town.
Yeah.
By comparison to our neighbor to the east. So
yes.
I was just hoping that would mean community members would also have a chance to participate.
So thanks to you, the superintendent, as you probably all know, extraordinary. I'm glad that she's here in West Sacramento, the vision, her experience. For us, it's a dance. We can look at the district and say, we don't want to deal with the district, regardless of, under partnership. We can just stay at the university and do what we do. But because of what, the couple of meetings we had, the excitement we have about the district, and one of the things the superintendent talked about was the community, like the stakeholders, and the importance of the community being involved in the direction of the school district. So for us, a focus group is having parents, right, and getting their response about what it is they believe their school should be and how to build community. Because if you have a strong community that's participating in your school district, well, you can't beat that. As well as the students. We want to have focus groups with the students as well. So it's just not about educators, but it's also about the families as well.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Alcala.
Thank you. Dr. Nguyen, so who would be facilitating this? You and your wife, or are you bringing graduate students, other people on?
So Maisha and myself, and then we have our graduate students who are trained facilitators. So what happened with our center is we can train our graduate students, but we're family. We all think alike. So a lot of our graduate students have been trained in Berkeley, one has been trained, or in Oakland, in Chicago. And so what we do, we have our graduate students be trained, and then they will help us out. But every training, I will be there, as well as Maisha, she'll be at another one. We will do two, and we're hiring an RJ coordinator as well. That posting just went up, so if anyone's looking for a job. But RJ coordinator to do this type of, to work at UC Davis. So that RJ coordinator will help out. So now we have 3 people who will be able to help facilitate. But Maisha and I, we will be the ones involved.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And the cost to this 2-year program would be $46,200, and the extra $10,000, that would be, I believe it was like for refreshments when you have these.
Yeah, so
So the total cost would be like 56.
yeah, and so like when you invite community, we always, this is humanizing research, we always think about the families, providing pizza, I don't know, childcare, refreshments, because at 5 o'clock, whatever time, individuals are hungry, as well as books, right? So if there's an opportunity for students, if there's an opportunity for the board to have access to books, that also helps out.
Okay, thank you.
And it includes the stipends for
Right.
our volunteers, our staff who are volunteering for this. I
Yes.
think that's an important piece to honor their time.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you.
so-
That answered that.
Any other comments? None? No? Thank you, Dr. Nguyen, for this. I know that it's been a long time coming, so really
Yes.
been impressed with your work over time, and your reputation precedes you, so thank you for taking a chance with us. And so I know that we're all very excited. The other thing that I'm not sure if Superintendent Luna informed you, that we're also part of the CSBA Equity Network. And so Trustee Kirby Gonzalez and I are part of that, and so we just want to kind of figure out how to kind of collaborate a little bit and make sure that what we're learning as part of the CSBA Equity Network, which also includes, actually for Trustee Kirby Gonzalez and I, actually unpacking the history of education, which was always very eye-opening. And all of that, and so make sure that we're, we're coordinating that as well. And so one of the things is an equity walk, and we'll figure that out. But just wanted to kind of flag that for you, that we are also part of that network, and so we'll bring whatever we learn here back to CSBA writ large, which is exciting. And no, just appreciate your, restorative justice versus restorative practice lens.
Yeah.
Right? Because after the governor signed
Yes.
the permanency of elimination of K charge, and by the way, we've been doing it for quite some time because it was a law for, they just removed the sunset.
Yes.
That there's been a lot of questions coming my way from parents about, what does this mean for Washington Unified? How are, why are you taking away a tool, et cetera? So I'm really excited to actually implement this. My question is a sustainability question.
Yes.
Right, so lots of times I've been part of different school districts where people come in, do one and done and out, and then all that work and the investment, 46,000, 50,000,
Yeah.
goes away. So can you talk to us about the theory of change and how
Yes.
this might be a sustainable effort?
Thank you for that question. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we, over the last 2 days, we met and we talked about how can restorative justice be sustained. And the schools that restorative justice were doing a great job throughout the state, it was about the culture, right? And so for us, one of the things we talked to the superintendent about is we see ourselves doing this for 2 years. We're done. Now, if you say you want to go deeper and wider, that's great, but we don't want to be dependent on you for us to have any kind of revenue. Our goal is to provide the training, and how will it be sustained? It's going to be sustained through the culture of the school, right? Meaning, if the board is trained, if the teachers are trained, if the students are trained, you're building this culture where you can own, because restorative justice isn't something that someone owns. It's an indigenous way of life. And if Washington Unified can own restorative justice, and if there's a teacher who can also provide the training within their school, that's how it will be sustained. And for us, since we're at UC Davis, we're not too far. So you can always say, hey, Tori, Maisha, we have a question or two about this. Do you think you can come in and spend an hour with us? After 2 years of working with you all, it's a partnership. I put contract partnership because I don't want to be deceiving, because a partnership sometimes it doesn't involve money. But this is a contract partnership. But afterwards, it's a partnership, which means we will be around. We're not going anywhere. We're not in Pennsylvania, and we're not in New York. We're at UC Davis, and we're trying to be part of your community.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Well, we are welcoming you into our community.
Thank you.
In many ways. So appreciate that. And so maybe my questions are a little poignant. I'm just kind of a blunt tool, right? So
No, the whole thing about sustainability is.
I have another question. That's
The whole thing about
question.
sustainability is, for me, before I got into education, I worked 20 plus years in nonprofit.
Yeah.
And anytime a foundation gave us money, and this is what we talked about today, is you can have, our whole thing is around 5 or 10 years receiving money, but what happens after that?
Yeah.
How is it sustained?
Yeah.
And the whole thing is, how does the community embrace it? And they have to be empowered to say, this is who we are, and it's part of the culture.
Yeah. I ask that because you are bridging an election cycle. So I'll be very honest, the board you have today who's adopting and who's 100% behind you will not be the board in a couple years from now. Just because it just won't.
Yes.
And so that in the back of your mind, as you work with us, leadership is a big component of that, and how do you help us sustain that momentum, whether it be both at the board and the cabinet level, who actually we charge with administering this. So that's just a kind of a flag out there of that. And that you straddle two kind of different two different boards.
Yeah, and that's reality,
Yeah.
right? Not only is it the board, superintendent can be the next Secretary of Education of the United States, right?
Hey, are you going anywhere?
So, and that's the reality.
Under the current federal administration?
No, I said the
Is
next.
there something you know?
No, I was talking about way down in the future. But I'm just saying that's what happens with a lot of school districts. Leaders, boards change, and you see it in Oakland Unified,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's the reality.
Heartbreak, yes, thank you.
Oakland Unified, we see that with the different superintendent.
Yeah.
You see it with the cuts in the budget.
Yeah.
That's reality.
Yeah.
It's just not
That's reality.
RJ, but it's also other programs.
Yeah, so for full disclosure, I helped start the restorative justice program in Oakland, and have seen that, and we've had that conversation before when we first met. What was fascinating about me, even though it got cut, the city came in because it was such a big part of the community practice that the city actually saved the RJ program. So that's something to think about for me in terms of a sustainable conversation, as budget cuts happen. How does this grow beyond us? And I think the focus groups, the conversations.
The families.
The families of saying, this is what we want. Because that gap wasn't getting closed and they were eliminated, but definitely the city came in and saved them.
And the power of the students, let's not forget.
Absolutely. But the city, politicians react to what communities say. And so
Yes.
this was important to the community and the students and the families that they served. So I'm hopeful that that's actually the sustainable piece, like having been away from Oakland over 10 years from now, and that it was on the chopping block, but it was important enough for the entire community to save. So.
And the last thing I want to add is, we do it, you all do it well. Hopefully there's funding opportunities throughout the state and from other foundations, right? To continue to figure out ways to support the community, the school district, and the educators here in West Sacramento, Washington Unified.
Definitely.
So you're not the only way to fund, there's other opportunities, but we have to do it well.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all, enjoy.
Okay, thank you. All right. So moving on to item M2, Special Education Services Performance Indicator Review. Dr. Andy Parsons. Okay. And Sue Massey.
Good evening, President Wong, Board of Trustees, staff, and guests. Yes, Dr. Parsons and Director Clover Macy will be giving the presentation this evening regarding our special services, specifically our performance indicator review. But before they come up and give you information regarding the PIR, the performance indicator review, I just kind of wanted to set a little bit of context. So this is specifically reflective of Special Services Department, in other words, Special Education Services. I'm reminded of a quote here, and it's impossible to map out a route to your destination if you don't know where you're starting from. In education, too often we feel like we don't have the time to wait to find out where we're actually at and really look at root causes and really look at what has happened in order to then fulfill a strategic plan, a very smart plan to progress and move forward. So I say that because we're really focusing on our journey. The destination, I hope people do not see that the California dashboard is not our destination. The more important thing is how we walk every single day in our education for our students. One thing I wanted to make sure that our board knows for the perspective of it. So there are about 1,100 public school districts in California alone. In the year 2016-17, when the new accountability system came in for the state of California, 600 school districts were identified under this performance indicator review, marked to make progress out of 17 qualifiers, indicators. In 2017-18, that number 600 moved to 934 school districts. In 2018, 1,503 school districts are currently addressing the performance indicator review in the state of California. Now, before I just said there are 1,100 public school districts. So that means the 1,503 school districts that are addressing performance indicator reviews include charter schools as well in the state of California in the area of special services. And I'm saying that because I want to make sure that our public and our families don't see us as we're failing. We're not failing. By all means, we're not failing. But I want to make sure that we remember that it's our journey. So if you recall, I asked the board for permission to bring in Fiscal Crisis Management Assistant Team, the FCMAT, in 2016-2017. Now, I don't know what superintendents in the state of California want to have FCMAT in their school district, not very many, but I do.
Saxony?
I do, because if there is a concern or if there's an area where we need help, then there's nobody better to call than FCMAT. So I embraced that, and I asked the board, and I thank you for granting that time for them to come and help us to find out where are we going to be in the future of our California dashboard and in the future of how special services is going to be looked at in the state of California. FCMAT did a great job because it revealed a lot of things. It revealed 3 things that we needed to create a strategic plan for, and that is the area of systems of practice. We can't go back and change the past. We're not here to do that. What we're here to do, and what we're here for agencies like FCMAT to do, is to help prepare for a stronger future and to make progress. The second one is about our services and our programs. In regards to core instruction and interventions, you've heard me say that our district, we lost a phase in our district of response to intervention. We moved straight to MTSS, and you see how that has progressed over the past 2 years. We had a lot of catching up to do. And the last one was professional learning for all staff, not just staff who teach our students with disabilities. Actually, all of our staff does. All of our staff does. All of our administration oversee all of our students, no matter what needs they have. So that being said, that's been our journey of special services. And so what you're going to hear today is, and you've seen the report when this first came out and how we've been working on it with our Yolo County SELPA, and also reports to the CDE in regards to how is Washington Unified putting in sustainable and progressive measures to ensure that our students identified with special needs are going to make progress accordingly. So with that, I want to also say, so that I don't forget later in my report, I want to thank our Director of Special Services, Sue Macy Clover. She's got a huge task, and it's a very complicated program. And in no way will ever one school district ever be perfect. Attorneys have said it is just impossible to be 100% in compliant, but I think it's possible. In that we are giving it our all and our best by putting in strong systems. I want to thank Sue for that. And of course, Dr. Parsons, who oversees that in Ed Services. So with that, I'll let them make their presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Luna. Good evening, Board of Trustees, community, and Cabinet. Tonight, Director Massey Clover is going to go through some data with you. The first year I was here, as under the leadership of Superintendent Luna, we did bring in FICMAT, and through that process, Sue Massey Clover worked with her staff to create a 3-year plan. And so a lot of this has been in motion for the last couple years. What we're going to do tonight, Sue will take you through the performance review. She will talk about the specific indicators for Washington Unified. We'll talk about the root causes, because we did create a team for the PIR, including our SELPA representatives. And then we'll talk about next steps. Secondly, so you're aware, there are 17 indicators in the performance review. We have 5 out of the 17 that we need to work on, that we need improvement on. The rest of the indicators we were fine in. So I just wanted to point that out. So the 5 indicators is indicator 1 has to do with graduation, 4-year rate. Indicator 3 is our statewide assessments, participation, and achievement rates. Indicator 5 is least restrictive environment, or LRE. You'll hear that a lot. Indicator 6 is the preschool least restrictive environment, which, as Sue will tell you, that we will be out of that now that we have moved our preschool to be with their general ed peers. And lastly, indicator 14 is post-school outcomes. So I'm going to turn over the mic to Sue and have her walk you through it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Good evening, President Wong, School Board Trustees, Cabinet, and guests. Thank you for the introduction. The PIR, or another acronym in the special ed world, the Performance Indicator Review, pulls information from the dashboard. In certain areas, it pulls it from CalPADS, which is another state reporting system, CaseMIS, and CASP. And so some of our indicators, such as indicator 1, which is our 4-year graduation rate, is found on the dashboard. And yes, while we are in the red, if you look deeper, we actually increased our graduation rate by 11.7%, which is actually very high. When you look at the rest of the state, I think they were in like 5 or 6%. And so I'm really pleased to see the upward trend. So when we look at red, it doesn't always mean it's absolutely awful. If we look deeper, we can often see, as long as we're going this way and we're going up, that's the important piece, that the things we're putting into place are working. So for indicator 3, state assessments for students with disabilities, there's 2 pieces to it. One, we have to have at least a 95% participation rate. We met that. Our students who take the state assessments are still under the rigorous assessments of the SBAC, except for our students with moderate to severe disabilities who take the California Alternative Assessment. In this particular, for English language arts, we were at a negative 123, and for math, it was a negative 151.9. This is as an entire school. One of my plans is I now need to go back into the dashboard and isolate each school and see who made growth, or who has stayed stagnant, or who needs improvement, so we know where to specifically target supports. For indicator 5, for the least restrictive environment, we met the first target. They broke this one down into A, B, and C. Students spend greater than 80% of their time in gen ed. The target was 51.2%. We were at 51.9%, so we were found compliant. We met that target. For students less than 40%, the target was less than 22.6, and we're at 23.12. We're getting closer. Things that we're putting in place is bringing us toward that. For students in separate schools, those will be our non-public schools, and the county program of Greengate in Woodland, which is a school for students with multiple disabilities and autism, that is an isolated campus. And so they're working in Woodland to actually move that campus to a comprehensive site. Currently, this year, about 3% of our students are in separate schools, which if they were to count the target area now, we would have met the target. So we're hoping to maintain that. Indicator 6, this was new this year, preschool. The percentage of 3 to 5-year-olds in a separate school, the target was less than 32.4. We were at 36.14, so our target was not met. But as you are aware, we moved the preschool from Alice Norman to Elkhorn Village Elementary, where they're going to have that opportunity to be with the state preschool. They will actually go into kindergarten as they transition to that grade level. They'll be participating in some of the assemblies. They're actually getting to be together out at recess, so there's much more opportunity for them. We're also sending some of our paraeducators out to where these students attend part of their day in a state preschool, so that those paraeducators can share their knowledge and expertise and support students on IEPs in those settings as well. Indicator 14 is post-school outcomes. Those are our students who have graduated or moved on, and we're required to keep track of them for a 2-year period. The percentage of students enrolled in higher ed, the target was 53.5. We were at 39.1%. The target was not met. I do know that this past year, 6 students on IEPs were accepted into 4-year colleges, so I am ever hopeful. The next 2 targets we met, students that are enrolled in higher ed or competitively employed, or any education or employment. Our workability program really helps with that because it's getting our students involved and out in jobs. Cold Stone Creamery has a lot of our students, and so they learn how to develop those skills to be good employees, and it helps them when they leave the high school. So then we went into our root cause analysis. So we looked at our systemic programs and choices for placement. So it used to be our past practice was a certificate track. That's limited now to our students who are in the more of mod severe programs. If you are a special day class student or a resource student, you're on diploma track. We had limited placement choices. We're starting to change those. A number of parent requests for home and hospital or for independent study or for different placements have come in. And then tracking of our post-secondary students. Professional development, teaching all of our staff about differentiated instruction. Making sure that our interventions are in place, and really looking at the level 1 MTSS so that we're making sure that our identification is taking place after we've had significant interventions in place. That's starting to happen. Strategies for improvement. More MTSS intervention supports. More integration of students with special needs into the general education program. And one of the things you will notice is when we came up with all of these interventions, we did try our best to align it to LCAP. In this case, it's aligned to LCAP Goal 2, Action 2. Looking at the least restrictive environment, not because it's mandated, but because it's good for kids. Co-teaching model. We have some teachers co-teaching. We also have West Ed coming in. They're going to train our administrators because getting that schedule is tough, that master schedule. They'll also be working with our gen ed teachers and our special education teachers on appropriate and effective co-teaching. Equitable access. We now have SDC students who are going on diploma track. They have a right and they're on it. We're doing a lot more push-in terms of math, English, and science, with teachers going into general education classrooms, also paraeducators going in to provide support. Paraprofessionals are being assigned by student need. professional learning time, discussions, and a lot of data review. Equitable access. So one of the important things when you're in high school, well, even before, starting in kinder, you want to start looking at where a student needs to go to get a diploma. But really keeping track of our students, and are they receiving the rigor, and are they understanding the lessons that they're learning so that they can move forward and take those classes in high school that will help them either through A through G or with actually getting their diploma. We've promoted co-teaching through our summer program between extended school year and our ELD, which is also aligned to LCAP. We have the Summer Bridge program for incoming ninth graders at the high school to give intervention for English and math. That's available to general ed and special ed students. We evaluate levels of mainstreaming and inclusion. I'm always looking at it. Our teams are always looking at offering the least restrictive environment first, making sure our students have access to that core. And then, of course, we relocated the preschool from Alice Norman to Elkhorn Village. I'm hopeful. I see growth. I have an amazing team out there who works diligently. I have administrators who are supporting what it is we're trying to do. And I'm very hopeful that each year we will get closer and closer and we will meet the standards that we need to meet.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Sorry, last slide is questions, but.
It is. Darn, no.
Do we have any questions? Vice President Pizzotti?
Yeah. So when I was looking at the indicators, we were fairly close on meeting all of our indicators except one. And that's the 14A, where we were at 39.1 and the target was 53.3. Can you maybe explain a little bit more in depth as to what the barrier was, as to why we're so far off when we were so close on so many others?
As one of the slides was showing, I think now that we've provided SDC students the opportunity to be on diploma track as opposed to certificate of completion track, we've opened the door for them to now start getting their diploma and moving on into four-year colleges. With a certificate, it's a lot more difficult. You're starting at a junior college level, or you're going as a fifth-year senior so that you can earn a diploma. So I think just the way that things were initially set up for SDC students to be on certificate of completion as opposed to diploma track inhibited our ability to enroll those students in higher education. Now that that's been lifted, I think we will see an increase in that.
Okay.
So you're saying we had different standards for students who are on SDC?
Initially, a few years back,
Years ago on IEP?
yeah, students
Yeah, I
on IEPs who were in special day classes were on certificate of completion. We removed that.
So how long do you think then it would take for that number to come up, if that change was made?
The change was made 2 years ago. I anticipate, well, a year ago fully. I would anticipate another 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Alcala?
I want to follow up on that because I had that same question.
Yeah.
I noticed that we had, under the employment, it's 100%. Could that be a factor in the students not going into the higher ed? I mean, our numbers not being higher there?
Could you,
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, under employment, we've reached 100%.
correct.
And I'm just wondering if that was a factor also in perhaps some students, because of economics, not pursuing and meeting our goal under the percentage of students enrolled in higher ed.
I think that could be a factor, yeah. A lot of our kids really like to go to work and gain that income, some of them to help support their families. And with a workability program, the kids are encouraged to apply for different jobs. So I think that's part of the reason, because we really do want to see those kids doing both, actually, being able to go to school and be employed.
So I know a lot of students sometimes, with the best of intentions, the parents want them to go to college.
Right.
But they themselves don't have the ability. I think that's why it's great that we have PK and programs like that sort of navigate, the parents to help their children, get through those hurdles of financial aid and everything. So I'm just wondering if, we've really focused in on helping the parents there. The PK program is great, but it's something that people have to volunteer.
There is a program that we're using through our SELPA that is training parents on how to get their students into college and work with their students so that they understand that students with IEPs can, in fact, and do successfully attend college. So we do offer trainings through the SELPA office for parents on that. We're also working more closely on transition plans for our students, especially in the 12th grade as they're exiting, so that their parents are more involved in what it is their students are trying to do. Starting in 9th grade, as we work with the student, what are your academic goals, what are your employment goals, and really targeting those transition plans and making sure that parents in those IEP meetings are understanding what is being said and have the opportunity to ask questions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before I ask mine? Clerk Jackson?
Sue, I think you probably know where this is going to go. But one of my first questions is, are we evaluating or going back through and evaluating the IEPs of our students that are in SDC class to make sure that those are students that actually belong in an SDC class?
Yes, they are, because a year ago, I audited every SDC IEP myself and took a look. We've also worked with our IEP teams to have them, we have a thing called an ed benefit form that is really detailed on going in depth on what ed benefit the student has received, what services they may continue to need, so that we're really targeting specific areas. And so it's not easy now to put somebody in a special day class. It's a very difficult task. And so we've really trained our IEP teams on what to look for, focusing on that least restrictive environment. We've really worked with our administrators on what to look for when they're in those IEPs, on making sure that our students have access.
And in addition to that, as we're going through that process, I would hope, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but are there the exit strategies for kids that have IEPs, are those in place early on? Because I think a lot of times people, the assumption is, on a lot of ends, that because a child has an IEP as a first grader, does not necessarily mean that that child needs to have an IEP all the way through school. At some point in
Absolutely.
time, that child should be able to transition out of needing that IEP.
Absolutely agree. Again, through training and different conversations with our IEP teams, when we meet with our SDC cohorts and with our RSP cohorts, also with our administrators, we're asking them to take a look. If the student's doing well, if their grades are looking good, if they're not needing as much support, if we're noticing that we're decreasing the specialized academic instruction they're receiving or their services, then we're requesting that they assess for exit. It doesn't need to be a permanent thing. It shouldn't be where they're living. It should be just a transition.
Right. It should be a bus stop.
It should be.
Not a train ride.
Yeah. In fact, we just exited 3 students at the preschool, who no
Fantastic.
longer needed the speech.
Well, I'm going to go to the summary that we have, because there were some things that really stood out to me, and that in one of the statements that I think if we're really focused on what we're doing, what's in the best interest of our students, that kind of stood out for me is the fact that in the report says that students in special day classes have a decreased opportunity to earn a regular diploma because they, in special education, who are the ones that are integrated into the general education program, graduate at a rate almost close to that of of students in general education. For me, that's a huge flag of, okay, well, wait a minute, then why aren't we doing that? In the sense that obviously, if we have kids that are in SDC classes that are integrated into general education classes and they're doing well enough to where their graduation rates are almost the same as general education students, to me, it seems like, well, that's an indicator that that's the direction we should be pushing. To be pushing those kids, as many of those kids as possible, into the general education class, because ultimately, it ultimately lifts everyone up.
Absolutely.
So to me, I'm going through as I read this, it kind of looks like a rainbow with all the things that I have highlighted on here. And I've said this before, to me, this is just a clear indicator that there's a huge need and a huge push that we need to have some sort of full inclusion for our students with IEPs in this district.
You can stress.
I just wanted to comment on two systems that were in place before Superintendent Luna began, and so that's what we're going to be working on. The first one has to do with preschool, of students that are placed in preschool because of referrals from outside agencies. And so we had students in preschool in SDC. They were not reassessed once they went into kindergarten. Therefore, they became our chronic SDC students. So the gap becomes larger and larger and larger. Superintendent Luna came in, got FICMAT in here, and we suddenly really evaluated our systems. The second part is what you're referring to as full inclusion, is that when you get to high school, the gap was so large, okay, that we really needed to go by student by need. Okay, because we needed to figure out which of the SDC students, because the other system that was in place, by the way, before Mary DiMartino, who is the director before Sue Massey Clover, the person before her set a system up that anyone who was in SDC in high school was non-diploma track, which is inappropriate. So that was changed 2 years ago. So now we reevaluated, as Sue said, all the IEPs and said, okay, which one of these SDC, how many of these SDC students can, with extra support, be mainstreamed out of SDC in high school? And so we did exit some of those students, but some, because they've gone through the system, in SDC, their gap is too large, and we're going to be setting them up for failure. So we're really trying to support those kids. But coming up now, as the system has changed, so we are reevaluating IEPs when they go into kindergarten to see, okay, do students really need to be in a special day class in kindergarten, first and second grade? And you're absolutely right. It is a bus stop. It is not a train ride. And so I love that analogy, because that's what we're working on now, is to exit as many students as we can in the early grades to give them access to core curriculum like every other student that we have in our district.
All right. And I wanted to, I have actually heard this written down because I want to make sure I didn't forget to say this, that Superintendent Luna, I have to commend you, because it's actually, it's very courageous to actually ask FICMAT to come in and to look at your district and identify problems, because that's definitely not something that's just like almost inviting CPS into your home. You know, I mean, it
They're
really
welcome
is.
into my home any day.
I mean, it really
As a
it
social
can
worker,
be.
come in.
It can be that type of a situation, because once they come in, you know, it's almost impossible to get them out. But that being said, you know, and I just see so many more opportunities for growth from working in a full inclusion model for the last 10 years, and seeing the growth that students have. When we have kids, we have had kids that came in that have autism, that normally probably would have been placed in an SDC class, but then all of a sudden they're included in they're fully included in middle school. Seeing those kids graduate from high school and go on and take classes at City College. You know, how much better and how many more students could we catch at an earlier age if things were done, if that was done sooner? Absolutely. And we're talking about kids that weren't fully included until they were in the 7th grade when we first started our program 10 years ago. You know, it takes me back to the young lady that shared a preschool class with my youngest daughter, who was in an SDC class. And I don't know, I haven't spoken to her mother, but to me it appears as though she's in an SDC class because she has autism. Whereas when you see her interact with my youngest daughter, you would never know. But yet and still, the one thing that scares the daylights out of her mother is the fact that she thinks that because she's in an SDC class and kids are going to look at her and see her as being different.
Yeah. Yeah.
When all she really needs is an opportunity, because she was integrated with her peers in preschool, and you never would have known if someone hadn't told you. And so there's opportunities for growth. Because it's so clear to me from the data that you've provided here, and from professional and personal experience, that model is something that can be and should be adopted, because ultimately they're all of our kids and we all have a responsibility. The things that you're asking for in terms of professional development, that's just good teaching. Differentiated instruction, that's just good teaching. If you're good at your job, you're already doing that. So there's really not a whole lot more that needs to be done.
Trustee Corbin-Gonzalez, do you have?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. going to try to gather my thoughts because we have a lot of parents that fight very, very, very hard to put their children in an SCC class, and we'll talk about the teachers in those classes and the work that they are doing to help their children be so successful. And you can't will a student to not need those supports sometimes. And I absolutely agree with everything being said in terms of co-teaching and where it is appropriate, 100% where it's appropriate, just as we're working on and expanding. But when we talk about you can't always see the needs of a child just by looking at them. And our SCC teachers are experts in this work. Our general education teachers are not. Should they differentiate? Should they get training? Should they work and co-teach? 100%. Do they teach children with IEPs? Absolutely, of course. But I was talking to one parent recently who has her child enrolled in an SCC class, and I said, how do you feel in terms of your child's needs being met, and what do you think about having your child fully integrated into a core classroom? And she said, my child has serious sensory issues. Do you know the anxiety that would cause my child during the day to be in a classroom of 25 students, 24 students, depending on the grade levels? But so I just want to make sure that it's very much about what is best for children, and that is a conversation with the parents, the teachers, and everybody in the room that's an expert. And I know that the intent we've come so far, and I so appreciate the work that's being done and the conversation and the push, because I do think it does take a push sometimes to push people out of their comfort zone in terms of where you can go and having more co-teaching models and whatnot. But I just want to make that very clear that we need to look at where students are appropriate. And absolutely, there are students that are in the high school SCC program who are having their needs met, and that is a very good place for them to be. And I want to make those points. Thank you.
So thank you for that. I have a couple of questions as I'm pulling up the data. I had your demographic data, so I'm curious to know that there are a large number of our students who are speech or language impaired, which is something I think, you think about inclusion, that would, if it's a language issue, maybe you could integrate some of that. But there's also this huge category of students who are, and I know this because I've worked in districts, specific learning disability, which is the catch-all.
Yeah, it's
right?
one of the highest,
Where you have
specific learning disability in speech.
Right. So it's huge. And
Right.
so I also noticed that, I don't know if it's disproportionate yet, but primarily are students of color who are actually Latino, Hispanic is what I'm seeing off the data. And I know that I don't know if that's kind of integrated or kind of the English language acquisition is impacting some of those assessments. I'm just going to throw it out there because I'm just looking at the data, looking at this. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of your children who possibly, I don't know yet, speak other languages that are identified as special education. Have you unpacked that at all?
Yes, we have. In terms of our students who are English language learners, our school psychologists have now been taking a deeper look, and if a student is new to the country, they're not getting assessed. We do get some pushback, and that's understood. Parents want what's best for their children. But we are pushing back and saying, no, the student needs the opportunity to learn the language before we start assessing for special needs or going through the SST process. So that's huge. Okay. That's one of our top priorities with our 9 school psychologists. We just met to talk about that, actually. In terms of specific learning disability, the nationwide, specific learning disability is the number one because of the processing disorder, whether it be visual processing or auditory processing. Speech and language comes in close behind, and that tends to go up higher when you start having kids who are being found eligible under autism, which is also another increase.
Yeah. And I see that we also have a significant number of students who are,
Yes.
on IP with autism, which is different
Correct.
from SLD. But hopefully, we're piecing that out, that truly
Yes.
autistic children are identified as autistic, and SLD,
Right.
again, is the catch-all for I'm not yet sure, but there's something there.
Yeah, and usually it's a processing disorder. It's an auditory or a visual processing disorder, in some cases both.
Yeah, or something like dyslexia, which, again, I believe that you can include somebody with dyslexia in mainstreaming. So just kind of throwing that
Yeah,
out there,
yeah.
that when we have the larger conversation, it's not just SDC alone. And I think that that's the continuum of education and
Right.
special education. And so we know that LRE is what is the least restrictive environment for that student and that
Right.
student's needs.
And remember,
So
it's
as
an individual
it's
education
actually-
plan.
It's actually individual, but I think both
Mm-hmm.
Trustee Kirby Gonzalez and Clerk Jackson are saying the same thing and from a different kind of lens, right? That inclusion doesn't mean that might not ever have an SDC classroom.
It needs to be
Because-
appropriate inclusion, and
Right.
some students could go in faster than others, so you develop those transition plans to guide them in slowly, and if it starts at 5 minutes a day, that's what it starts at, and then you continue to add time. So with our now Learning Center model at Westfield and at Stonegate, with our increased co-teaching and push-in at the high school, we're going to start expanding that so that we take on other schools to go to the Learning Center model, so kids are included in the general education and not spending all that time in a special day class self-contained.
Yep, and yeah, and there's a lot of other benefits to that. It just, field trips and other things, you don't want them to be in a self-contained class when
Correct.
other people, they
Right.
just have to.
We
yeah,
just want to
so-
be purposeful and make sure that we're doing it well and that we're doing it right, so it helps kids and doesn't hurt them.
So I just kind of want to hold that conversation
Mm-hmm.
that it is continuum, and both of my colleagues, I think, are have a perspective that is valid and true, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
figure it out as we move forward. But just looking at the data alone, I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so just wanted to kind of flag that, and hopefully we're being data-driven.
We are being
with how
data-driven.
how are we moving forward with kind of transitioning our special education program into compliance? Because I did share with the board, and I'm sure other people know this, is that, an organization that I used to work with filed suit against Sac City for lack of inclusion of certain populations. And that was not lightly taken, and that was a 6 to 7 year process before that suit was filed. So I don't want us to be put in that situation.
No, me either,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
No, we are working on it, we are diligent, we are data-driven.
Yeah.
We're constantly looking at data, not just by district, but by site.
Yeah, because we know that litigation is expensive. So
It
again,
is.
I don't want us to be put in that
You
situation.
are aware that knock on wood, our litigation has gone down.
No, we have. And
Yeah.
it was one of the first things, as my colleagues could tell you, that on the board, I make sure, because this is an issue of mine as well, because of the organization I work for, so, as a child advocate, so, appreciate that. Any other questions from the board? Vice President Pizzotti?
Just had a quick question. Dyslexia, as you brought up, is kind of a personal issue to me. So I just have a question as to what kind of classes do we have established for that?
So one of the things we did is we trained a minimum of 2 teachers at each site in a system called the Sonde system. Dr. Sonde helped to author the Orton-Gilliam program, and it was for individual students. The Sonde system is by group. So we trained at least 2 teachers at each site, except the high school. So our focus was on the K-8. We bought kits for K-2 and 3-8. And it's already being implemented. We just got it in February, so we're looking for data to see how children's reading is improving as we go, but we now have a program that addresses dyslexia.
Okay, thank you.
Jackie, one question.
Yes.
Okay.
Trustee Alcala.
I just have a quick question. So how many times a year do we assess a child?
Well, it depends. So
Legally.
mandatorily, legally every 3 years, except for the preschool. We assess going in at 3, we assess going out at 5. It's a full assessment to make sure that what we're doing is appropriate and placement and services are appropriate, or exit is appropriate. If a parent wants another assessment, a formal assessment, we wait for after a year, so it doesn't invalidate any of what we're doing. And other than that, there are the informal assessments, the pre and post assessments in the classroom. So it's an ongoing process. We're looking at goals every reporting period to see if students are making growth and reporting that to the parents also.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? I know this is an ongoing conversation, and thank you for your work. Thank you, Superintendent Luna, for bringing in FICMAT and the parallel of bringing CPS in your home, which means that she was confident in opening up what we need to kind of unpack, and so appreciate that. Appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to M3, September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Dr. Phillips, can I invite you to the podium? And Graciela, are you joining?
Yes, she is joining me.
All right.
On this side. Oh, you got that side? All right. How are you guys doing?
We're well, how are you?
Well, I'm good. How's everybody back there? Tired, probably.
It's early, it's only 7:25.
I know. Good evening, President Wong, and where's trustees and Superintendent Luna's in there, and colleagues and community. Tonight, along with Graciela Garcia, who is one of our social workers assigned to River City High School, who comes with a wealth of knowledge, both institutional and historically, on the services that are provided to our students and the services that our community partners provide to our students. So I asked her to join me tonight. We'll be presenting important information on Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And actually, this week kicks off the National Suicide Prevention Week, where we inform and engage health professionals and general public on suicide prevention and warnings of suicide. Is this going? Am I not doing it right? Try one more time. Oh. Okay, we're done. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, you did, you moved.
Let's try it again. Which one is it? Okay, you got it? Okay, all right. So when the Assembly Bill 2246 passed in 2016, actually California became the first state to have such legislation surrounding suicide prevention. And because the governing board recognized that suicide is one of the leading causes of death among our youth, they passed the board policy and administrative regulation 5141.52, which is awesome that it was passed. And I was looking at 2017 and decided to pull up some data, some statistics on 2017. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, suicide was the 10th leading cause of death among death with approximately 47,000 people in this country. And when you disaggregate it and break it down to some of our students in their age ranges, if you look at ages 10 through 14, 860 of our children committed suicide that year. When you look at ages 15 to 24, 6,252 individuals committed suicide. And when you look at both of those age groups, in those age ranges, they rank second among the top 10 leading causes of death in this country. That includes homicide, accidental death, congenital heart disease, cancer, what have you. So it's alarming statistics. It is also estimated that as many as 100 to 200 suicide attempts are made for each youth that committed suicide.
Can I ask just for this conversation that we refer to individuals who die by suicide? They die by suicide?
Died by suicide.
Because it's
That's
a
fine.
mental health disease versus?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank
Who
you.
died by suicide.
Yeah.
And that very same year, Yolo County had 23 individuals who died by suicide. I don't have the statistics on how many of them were in the age ranges of 10 to 18 or 10 to 24. And when you look at today, suicide is the third leading cause of death for our youth ages 10 to 24. Let me see if I can, and the board policy outlined 7 measures and strategies for Washington Unified to implement, from staff development to positive school climate, crisis intervention, counseling, and post-vention strategies. Go to the next. And this is some of our staff who will be assisting and leading and helping us implement those 7 measures and strategies. We have social workers. We have one with us here. 7 outreach specialists, high school counselors. We have 5 at River City, 1 at YOLO, who also assists with adult ed, and then we have a part-time counselor at Middle College. We have 4 school nurses, 9 psychologists, so there's 1 at every site. Is that right, Sue? 3 nurses? There's 3,
psychologists.
but there are 9
Psychologists.
psychologists, 1 at every site? Okay. And we have, obviously, we have a litany of administration and teachers that will assist. So our commitment to this implementation is, 1, to conduct staff development surrounding suicide awareness and prevention, especially because those individuals we just mentioned are in contact with our students daily. And hopefully they can spot some of the warning signs of our students who actually have some of the subgroups who have some of the higher risk, like our homeless, our foster youth, students with disabilities, LGBTQ, just to name a few. And hopefully we can get those individuals to refer students to the appropriate person so they can receive that necessary help. I'm going to turn it over now to the fabulous Miss Garcia, who will take over from here.
Good evening, everybody, board, community.
come here.
I just wanted to kind of go from where Dr. Phillips was talking in regards to staff development. Something that Washington Unified School District has taken on is definitely training, taking very seriously the training that we do. When I say staff, I'm talking about our outreach staff, psychologists, counselors, social workers, liaisons in training with the SOS system, the signs of suicide, and really being able, once we are strong enough, understanding that system, to be able to go out there and train teachers. You know, currently we have, through K through 8 schools, we have 1 social worker for every 2 schools. So with that being said, the staff development is important for the social worker to go out there to your assigned schools and train teachers, train staff, office staff, all staff really, to see the signs and to know what to do once you do suspect that a student is in need of support, and to know the steps you have to take to refer. Who do you refer to? So that staff development is really, really important. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we have our staff development in honor of National Suicide, the first week of the entire month. Next, we were talking about instruction. So what Washington Unified Outreach has been doing for the past 5 years is bringing in a community partner, Yolo County Suicide Prevention, to come into our classrooms, specifically our science classrooms, because we feel that our teachers in the science are a little bit more equipped to support the students after the training, after the classroom, educating our students to recognize the warning signs, to be able to help themselves and to be able to help their friends, and then promoting mental health and emotional health, so that it's basically to honor and to teach the students the skills to find trusted adults, to be able to reach out and to let them know that they need help or that their friends need help, and that it's okay to do that for friends without feeling like you're betraying their trust. You're really saving their lives. So prevention. Prevention is another commitment to implementation, and the prevention that we are a part of is empathy building workshops. About 5 years ago, the Teen Center, Collins Teen Center has existed, but about 5 years ago, we started an empathy building workshop with the Teen Center, and it's sort of like a field trip that we have 7th and 8th graders look forward to going to. And in that workshop, it's an all-day where we build relationships, we build trust, and then we go into the whole component of being able to step up, step forward, and identify those around you that are struggling, that have similar struggles, that are going through the same thing, or have gone through the same experience and have overcome whatever life has thrown at them, and that they're not alone, because there's this strength about not feeling alone that kind of builds you up and helps you through situations, just even as individuals ourselves. Hence support systems that we now have in place. So prevention and empathy building workshops, we utilize our Collins Teen Center, And intervention, going into intervention, we have crisis intervention for students threatening suicide. So we've developed assessment plans that we didn't have prior to 5 years ago, where we have risk assessments, where once a student is identified, they are referred to the social worker or the psychologist who are equipped to conduct an assessment, and then therefore, after that assessment has been completed, to be able to follow through with making sure that there's a safety plan around the student, whether it be sending the student home with a safety plan in place, or whether making that difficult decision to, have a student assessed at a local hospital and then therefore transferred to a facility where they can receive more care. So that intervention is in place today. And then lastly, postvention, strategies and counseling for students and staff and others to cope. When I think of postvention, I think about the great system that we have in place today, considering all the crises that that West Sacramento has experienced with, just the recent deaths, student deaths, and how our team has come together to do postvention support group, and how we come together not necessarily just, within our own group, but with Yolo County Mental Health, with even Sacramento County, their support dog to come in and really help walk the students through crisis, through these really difficult times in our community. So community partners that support this implementation, I just wanted to make sure to recognize them. And so Yolo County Mental Health, as I mentioned, Yolo County Suicide Prevention, which they do the classroom presentations and education. They also do pre and post questionnaires for students. So when they go into the classroom, they have a questionnaire for students to find out how much they really know about suicide and depression and what signs to look for. And then at the end of the presentation, they have a post. And then those post questionnaires, when the students mark them, and they mark like a tier 3 where they know somebody or they are feeling that way, then those questionnaires are referred back to the social worker so that we can follow up and that we can make sure we address the whole child. So that's a wonderful system that we have in place with Yolo County Suicide Prevention. And then, when we do the assessments, we also have, partnerships with Communicare, Stanford Youth Solutions, Turning Point, where we do more therapeutic and counseling services. We don't want to leave out Victor Services, because Victor Services is just a great agency that really helps with preventive work in terms of not just counseling, but small groups, grief counseling, girls empowerment, young men empowerment groups, just to be able to do a lot of the preventive work that is much needed in order to help young people not get to that point of thoughts of suicide and down to that point of crisis, so to speak. And lastly, I wanted to share the youth suicide risk assessment that we've developed and that we are now implementing district-wide. And that youth risk assessment is completed by the social worker, the psychologist, and at the end of the assessment, so there's a section for the students, for the social worker to complete with the student providing the information, and then there's another section for the staff's own observation. So aside from what the student is sharing, what is your professional observation as a trained mental health professional? And then finally, deciding whether you're going to, what level you're going to classify this young person, either low, medium, or high risk, and then taking the steps to making sure that there's a safety plan in place, and that safety plan includes the parents, includes staff members, includes the principal, and then finally a list of numbers, hotline numbers that the students can utilize or the parents can utilize in case of a crisis. And I've actually, with my students, have practiced calling a couple of the numbers to make sure, because just to get that anxiety out of the way and for them to get familiar with what it's going to feel like and what it's going to look like if they ever have to use it. So, thank you.
And then our next steps are, one of the things we thought about is creating either a website or a web page dedicated to suicide prevention and resources, not only for, and also have, possibly staff development and trainings for not just staff, but for parents and students, resources that they can go to if they're in crisis, warning signs, and just keep it updated and put, current information in there all the time. And also create a plan. And we talk a lot about staff development and the training and instruction. We have that going on, but one of the things we really want to do is be consistent with it. We want to make sure that we're not just offering it to those who volunteer at particular sites, but get into every single site, hit every single school, get every staff member trained so that everyone is informed, not just those that want to be a part of. Do you want to add anything else to that?
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's important to train all staff. And the reason why it's important to train all staff is because our students build relationships, not just with specific staffs, not just with outreach, not just with social workers. They build relationships with everybody from, front office secretaries, from janitors, from, just
The bus driver.
the bus driver that was mentioned earlier. Yes, absolutely. They build relationships with everybody, and so it's important to train, be inclusive when doing suicide prevention trainings. Absolutely.
So I want to give you just a little example. I'm at Yolo High School as well, and I'm out front every morning giving kids knuckles or whatever. I can tell when they come in what kind of mood they're in.
Knuckles?
Knuckles. Bumps, fist bumps.
Fist bump.
I just call them knuckles. I'm old, I call them knuckles. And this one day I noticed a student that wasn't themselves. And I knew something was going on, I didn't know what it was. And then later on that afternoon, this individual was distraught, just crying. And just so happened, Graciela was there and was able to make a connection with this individual. And I will tell you, about 4 days later, I'm doing the knuckles again, and I said to that same person, "So how you doing?" I'm much better, and thank you for Miss Graciela for taking me to her.
Awesome.
She goes, they go, "I never talk to anybody, ever." And so thank you for taking me to her. So that was for me was powerful. And that's what we talk about, building relationships. Get to know the kids, get to know their moods. And then you can, make those judgments about, in terms of referring. So one last thing we want to do is that we talk about the stickers for the IDs. We definitely we're working on that right now to get
Not
those.
legally required.
Huh?
It's not legally required.
I know. So we had a little faux pas with the IDs, and we're gonna remedy that with getting the stickers for this year, and then hopefully next year, when they print them out, it'll be the updated information.
And I was actually I wanted to add, because I was actually really excited when you gave me that information today. He said, "Yeah, we're getting stickers for the IDs," and I said, "Oh, I've been doing that for a while now, where I would get a sticky, just a plain sticky that you use for, filing, and I would put 3 specific numbers that are on my risk assessment for students, and one of them is the text, to be able to text if you can't talk or you don't choose to talk.
Well,
and I would just tape it on their ID or tape it on one of their planners, or so that they always have it and they wouldn't lose it in case of a crisis.
Well, your practice and many school social worker practices across the way opened up the opportunity for that to become a mandate. So,
Thank you.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
Any questions?
And so, well, we have a couple of public comments, but again,
Okay.
just thank you for your work. Well, we have some questions afterwards, and
All right.
I think a lot of people often wonder what school social workers do, and there's a lot of value add that people don't see. There's a clinical lens that not anybody, that you are, social workers are, again, I'm biased, you guys know this, is that you're just trained to actually see things differently at that higher level, and to be able to actually have more social workers here, that we've increased the FTEs over time to actually oversee that and have the referral process where you can decide and do the risk assessment where U5150 is a great thing to have. So appreciate your work because it's not easy and because I've done it and it's not the easiest thing to do. But with that said, Ms. Weathersby, please.
Thank you.
Weatherly, sorry. I don't know why I said Weathersby. But I know, but I know it's Miss Weatherly.
Felicia.
Yes, Felicia.
Felicia.
Let's just go with that.
Okay, as long as you don't say bye yet. Hi, Superintendent Luna, trustees, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Felicia Weatherly, and this is my 23rd year teaching at River City. I've spent my entire career in this district, and I love it. Moved here myself in 2010 and brought my family. I'm a music teacher at River City, and when I got there, it was just 3 little classes, and now it's 3 full-time positions. And I'm very proud of having especially started the orchestra and the traditional jazz program there. This is Dylan. Dylan attended Alice Norman. He has a whole list of schools he went to. Alice Norman, Southport, Stonegate, when we moved to Stonegate, and then he got assessed for Gate, and that was when we were moving him to Westmore. So then he went to Westmore. He played Little League, Junior Raiders, got a black belt with the Jungs down the street. Knew a lot of our community members, and he. This picture was taken June 22nd, 2016, and 1 month and 1 day after we took this picture, he died by suicide. And as a mother, there's a lot I want to say, I guess, but I know I have to keep it under 3 minutes, and it's ticking, so here we go. I've searched this picture so many times to try to find what I missed. And so because of this, because of Dylan, and the fact I can no longer do anything for him mortally, I'm trying very hard to give his death some sort of meaning. So I think that we need to take a bold stance. I'm really glad we're talking about it. I know there was a lot of fear about talking about suicide, and it kind of felt a little bit like back in the day when they thought if we talked about sex, then, oh my gosh, now the kids will have sex. And if we talk about suicide, they're going to go, oh, wow, okay, I hadn't thought about that before. Great idea. So I've struggled a lot with why. Because he was very popular and very loved and had a great life. And until he died, I thought that that children that killed themselves had demanding parents or not present parents or neglectful parents or had bad lives or, were picked on or bullied. And then I realized that even kids have enviable lives and everything you would think a child could want. And a goofy, optimistic parent can still see that as their only answer. I really believe we need to hurry up and get to the teacher training part. We've had no training at the high school, and these kids come to us. We see them every day, and they trust us, and they will share with us. And what I have learned through the program, actually, the presentation, is to just ask them directly. And it's terrifying to look a student in the eye and say, have you thought about hurting yourself? Because then, we're mandated reporters. We have to deal with whatever they're going to say, and it's terrifying. But they're surprisingly honest. I think it's disarming when you're so direct with them. And I think that we need to empower our teachers to do that. On a positive note, hey, thanks for stopping the clock, by the way. On a positive note, I've searched, it's been a little over 3 years now since I lost my son, and I struggled with what I could do. I wasn't quite ready to speak a lot or talk to students, but I did start a group, which Stephanie Torres is going to speak to a little bit, called the Legacy Project. And the Legacy Project's mission, now in its second year, is to destigmatize mental illness and to fight social isolation. And I really believe that if we destigmatize mental illness, if Dylan could have felt okay about saying, I don't feel okay, but we throw out terms all the time. Kids say terms all the time. Oh, I just want to kill myself. It's kind of like, and adults say it too, and point two fingers at their forehead. And I can't even tell you how that turns my stomach when I see it. But the Legacy Project, we've worked in collaboration with Sandy Hook Promise. We last year and this year are about to do a Start With Hello Week, which is the 23rd through the 27th. And where we go out and we're going to make wristbands, and we're going to go find kids sitting by themselves. We offered them candy last year, and it kind of freaked them out. I don't know if it was the strangers with candy thing. So we're going to go with something else this year, and just gather up these kids that are usually just staring at their phones, because that's the way to be by yourself and not look like you're by yourself, is if you're staring at a phone. We also have plans to work with the Parkland students of March for Our Lives and Never Again. So I hate to tell you I'm building a bunch of activists, but we might be developing a bunch of activists. And we are actually a registered Save Promise Club, which is Students Against Violence Everywhere Promise. So if you go on the Sandy Hook website and you look it up, River City High School, West Sacramento, is right there on that website. And this club is also going to be volunteering at the end of this month at the Out of the Darkness Walk, which is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And we're working on other projects too, to empower the members and to have those members be a light. And in fact, on the back of her shirt, I'm going to make her come model it. Come on, Stephanie.
You're up next.
Our
Michael.
tagline is Light Up the Darkness. So I made her do this. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Felicia.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Torres, and I'm a senior at River City High School. Legacy Club is something much more than a program that's after school. Legacy is somewhere where I can be safe and talk about my true self. There are so many things that go in my life and the life of my classmates, both inside and outside of school. Legacy has been somewhere where I can build a family and help myself with things that I've dealt with. I have health issues that I've dealt with in my life, and this program has helped me to be safe and help others as well that have been dealing with stuff.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
did you have a question?
Oh, no, I just wanted to thank you for both of you for sharing your story, because I think it's very courageous. And earlier, Dr. Phillips, I didn't mean to stop you, but it is death by suicide, because it's the onus isn't on the individual, because we all know it's preventable.
Right.
So the language is that death, how could we have prevented it, and everything that you've stood for, and hopefully we can, honor his legacy, and yeah. And thank you so much. So with that said, I will hold back my tears and move it on to Vice President Pizzotti, who has a question or a comment.
It was just a comment, and it was about the Out of Darkness Walk. I actually represent a union of psychiatric nurses, and every year we participate in this Out of Darkness Walk for the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. So you mentioned it was at the end of the month. Mm-hmm. The Sacramento Walk, I just wanted to give everybody the dates here in case they wanted to participate, because it's statewide and it's actually countrywide, but there's several different locations throughout the state. The Sacramento Walk starts at the Capitol on the West Steps on September 28th at 10 a.m. Registration starts at 9 a.m. So,
Is it the 28th?
September 28th, it's Saturday.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Maybe we can, if we're going to send out notification to staff and other folks about Suicide Prevention Month, maybe we can include that.
That would be a good one.
In our communication.
Absolutely.
So I think that would be probably a good thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Alcala had. You can sit now unless Trustee Alcala, you had a presenter.
It's for Dr. Phillips
So
or
thank you
our
so much. And
discussion.
so Dr. Phillips and Graciela, I believe that Trustee Alcala has a few questions for you.
One question.
One question.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for this very comprehensive program. The question I had was, you talked about preventions, and I know that some death by suicides have been caused by bullying, cyberbullying. I've had some parents sometimes call me, and when their children are being bullied, and there's things on the, on phones and stuff, and people are saying, kill yourself, and some of these students have actually felt that way. What are we doing to address this, and how do we let the students know that if they see something like this, they should communicate who's being bullying?
Right, right. Having transferred over to the high school, I can speak on that specifically. Again, building these relationships. These students, I'm amazed. Somebody, I think the mom that spoke earlier said it clearly, is that they are willing to be open and honest and share so much information with you. But it all, again, big question. Yeah, what are we doing with this? And so speaking on the importance of kindness, speaking on the importance of building on the morals and the values that your parents taught you, or that maybe other family members taught you, is that we are all good, and from that build. And so a lot of students are doing is, I thank them for coming to me and for giving me that information, but I also let them know how important it is for them to rise up and do something with that information. And that, again, my office is a safe place except for when students are being hurt or they're wanting to hurt themselves or hurt others.
And then when we talk about bullying, and there's such a stigma around snitching or telling. And so that's always a hard one, because I'm always asking kids, why didn't you come and tell me? Why didn't you, because things get out of hand. But it's difficult. It's difficult, and the kids have a hard time coming forward because they don't want to be known as a snitch. But as we build those relationships with the kids, it could be just that one that comes to you and says, this is happening to me, and that's one that we can prevent.
Right, and also educating students and staff and teachers on what is the definition of bullying, and then what are your rights, and what steps can you take to address that. And so, we have our bullying report forms that at some point there was this confusion whether staff members are not allowed to fill them out, teachers are not allowed to fill them out. Yeah, no, everybody and anybody can fill out a bullying report. If you hear bullying is happening, report it so that we can look into it. Yes. If there's no harm done, to looking into it and making sure that kids are feeling safe at school. The school is supposed to be, a place where kids can escape from
their safe haven
stuff that's going on at home, or just this is a safe place for kids to learn. If kids are not feeling safe, they are not learning.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Oh, Clerk Jackson?
You guys were kind of reading my mind, because as I was thinking about questions to ask, you guys were 2 seconds behind me answering the questions. But the one thing I was actually looking for, an email that I had gotten, because I know one of the things that's actually part of our pre-service days in my district now is suicide prevention. In fact, I was looking for the email so I could forward the link to the training that we have to do online, and I just found it, so I'll email that to Superintendent Luna. And if you need a login, I'll shoot you my login also. But it's a training that takes about 45 minutes for us to do, and it's now part of part of our trainings that we have to do with like sexual harassment and things like that. It's just kind of in the package deal that we're now doing for that very reason. And that way, that's the one way that we're training all the staff in Sac City, is by having them complete that training. So I think that's probably one way that it can be done and very effectively, and that way gets it out to everyone, because like you said, a lot of times that first contact that you have with a kid first thing in the morning can be the difference maker. Being able to pick up on those subtle cues from kids as you give them that pound as they walk into the room or walk into onto the campus can be the difference maker for a lot of kids. So I want to commend you publicly for doing that, because it would be very easy, as an administrator, it'd be very easy to sit back in the office and kind of watch the day pass by and not have a lot of contact with the students. But by doing that, it makes a huge difference. And, that this work that you guys did and are doing and trying to bring awareness to this issue is very important. So thank you.
Trustee Kirby Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I really appreciated this. Sometimes we've passed a resolution in the past, but getting the information, having you in the room and hearing where we've gone is very powerful. So thank you for that. You mentioned the Yolo County suicide prevention going into science classrooms, and I'm just wondering what age that is. What grade is that?
Grade 7th and 8th science classes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. And then I echo the sentiments about the training and going through with everybody who's first with the kids, and also in terms of the work that our outreach specialists, the work that you're doing is so important, and I know it's also so heavy. And so I just want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as well, and that our staff that are doing these youth assessments and everything else, that we're aware of that, and just thank you. Thank you so much for that. I'm thinking of one way as we were going through this, and I just sent it to Superintendent Luna, thinking through a way of what came up with Trustee Alcala is the cyberbullying, and there are opportunities. I know that thinking that we have an SRO, and I just have seen SROs come in other areas, and it's a program. I just sent the information over, but it's NetSmarts, and it ends in a Z, netsmarts.org. And it has a whole PowerPoint, videos. It's very well done. I was told that the notes, I didn't see the instructor notes, but I was told they're a little more graphic than you would use with fifth grade. But the presentation itself was well done. And that was for fifth grade. And I think that might be a really nice opportunity to think about as how we can utilize our SRO time, and then how we can work with students on very young, before they're on all that social media. Kind of front loading how to use social media, who to talk to, and it goes into cyberbullying as well. So just as one more resource. And then I want to also say to Felicia, thank you. And I've been thinking of you and thinking of Dylan, and thank you for being here tonight as well and sharing your story and the work that you're doing. Thank you.
So on the resource tip, CDE has the mental health first aid, and they've offered several times to come to our district to provide that training for free. And it may soon also be law if the governor signs it, because it's on his desk. So just so you know, we have a direct in with the CDE mental health person and the superintendent who's actually trying to broaden that. So that may be a good thing to give you a little bit of break from training and see what's going on. So yeah, so let me know if you want to be in contact with Monica Nepomuceno, who's also a school social worker. So yeah, so that's that. And so, but thank you. So I know we're out of time, I think. All right, thank you. We have no public hearing in this meeting, so we're going to move on to approving the consent agenda, removing 03. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda unless are there any other changes to it? So Vice President Pizzotti moves.
I'll second. I'll second.
Yeah.
I had a comment. I'm wondering if that removal of the 03 could be moved, just thinking of time and to honor people at the beginning of action instead of at the end because of time.
Anybody have an objection to that? No. Okay, we will do that. But so item seconded by Trustee Kirby Gonzalez. All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Now we're going to move on to 03. Clerk Jackson, you requested for this to be removed to action.
Yeah, I did, and simply for the reason that in light of the actions that the board had taken at the beginning of the year in terms of eliminating positions, when I saw this on the agenda, especially with the addition of the Director of Compliance and Accountability position, it was unclear to me as to whether or not, one, if that was a position that was already budgeted, had been budgeted for prior to the cuts or after the cuts? And kind of where that kind of played out and things, because to me, it comes off as, it publicly can come off as that, well, here, they eliminated all these teaching positions, and then
Right.
we're adding another cabinet position. So I want to be clear on that.
Thank you so much for asking that question, because it was at previous board meetings, and not everybody may have heard those clarifications. So thank you for asking that. So this particular position was eliminated in the budget reductions as it stood. And after you do make budget reductions, you restructure and reorganize in the departments to see how the workflow is going to be. It can't be done before. I mean, some of it can be and some of it was. But as we look at the restructuring, this particular director position was already in the budget. So when the board made reductions, there was a director budget, a director position that was not determined already in the budget. We knew it was going to be in educational services, but it had not been defined because we didn't know where we were going to need to cover, if that makes sense. But the position itself was already in the budget, approved prior to reductions, during reductions, and in the June meeting for the full budget.
So just so then for clarification, so this is not a position that had been added after the fact, after the positions had been eliminated?
No, it was not. Thank you. It's not added financially to the budget, no.
Okay, thank you.
Vice President Pizzotti?
Yeah, from what I understand you saying, it was a placeholder position. The director,
Yes.
it was a placeholder position in the budget that has already been funded, and then we
Correct.
found what we wanted to do with it.
Correct, that's correct.
So I also have a question. So the
Trustee
person who's,
Go
right,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You ready?
Move forward, Trustee Alcala. I believe that we had this
Follow-up.
discussion before, too.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
The person who is now going to be assuming this position, was that the person who was in it previously? Or is this a
No,
new
it is
hire?
not. This has been, after the board, because this is a different position. Now, it may seem like the same position, but the board approved a revised job description, particularly to look at grants and oversee all of our grants in our district, onefold. And so it has been advertised on EdJoin for anybody in the public across the United States to apply to.
To be decided, salary.
Oh, yeah.
There's an administrative salary.
The
It's
class
a
and
salary
range-
schedule, yeah.
It just says TBD, is what, I think
TBD.
that's
There's-
why
that's
the
why we're
question's being asked.
confused.
Oh,
no,
thank you.
it just says TBD
May
is
I?
why.
Yeah, we're following the salary schedule that is already in place for administration.
Okay, I'm sorry. Could you tell us what that is?
I don't have that in front of me, and part of the reason, I don't know if Norma you might have that, but it's not a negotiated contract. We are following the Washington Unified School District's certificated management salary schedule. We did finalize interviews today, which is why we are bringing it forward tonight, because we are in dire need of particular timelines of our grants at this point. So I'll let her. Oh, we do have it here. How about that? We do have it here. And so it is under Director's Certificated, 220 days. And on the salary schedule, which is on our websites, open for our public, Step 1 ranges from $109,876.83. And it ranges to Step 5 and caps after Step 5 at $133,555.49.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow,
Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah. The only reason it was asked is because the materials provided it was not on our materials, so.
Yes, because, yes.
Okay. Any other questions about this? Vice President Pizzotti?
So moved.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You have your certificated staff. I don't know if you want to introduce anybody.
Yes, we do at this evening. And again, I want to thank the trustees for asking the questions. It's so good to come back to that. So this evening, we want to introduce our new Director of Compliance and Accountability. And I'd like to introduce to the board Stephanie Grote, and she's here right now.
Welcome, welcome.
Stephanie received her bachelor's in human development from Cal State Hayward. She has a multiple subject teaching credential, which she received from Sac State. Her master's in educational leadership is also from Sac State. She's currently working on her doctorate in organizational leadership at Brandman University. In addition to working on her doctorate, Director Grote serves as a state board member for the Association of California School Administrators. She currently serves, well, I guess she has been serving as the coordinator of supplemental student support in the Eureka Union School District. She served 13 years as principal at Maidu Elementary and Dry Creek Elementary Schools. During her time at Maidu Elementary, the school received a California Gold Ribbon School Award. She served 4 years as assistant principal of Heritage Oak Elementary. She served 6 years as a classroom teacher. Here's what some of her references say. Stephanie Grote is a standout in many areas, but I have been most impressed by her high work ethic and sincere commitment to staff, community stakeholders, and families. Mrs. Grote is an extremely effective communicator and has the ability to gather and process information quickly. She strives to ensure that every decision she makes is based on what is best interest of the students of the district. We welcome Stephanie Grote to Washington Unified.
Welcome. Welcome. All right. We look forward to working with you. Okay. With that, we are going to move on to P1, approval of the MOU between Washington Unified School District and WSTA for instructional technology leaders. Ms. Norma Gonzalez.
Good evening, President Wong, trustees, Superintendent Luna, Cabinet, and community. I want to first, before I introduce Marco and his team, wanted to thank WSTA President Mike Buse and also Don Stoffer, because in my 5 months that I've been here, the communication, the collaboration has been utmost professional and very, I'm very grateful to have that relationship with them. As a result of that partnership that we've had, Marco Baeza, the director, and his partner in crime, wanted to introduce them. But in essence, and they'll go through the presentation, but what we've done is we've worked together on drafting some, I don't want to call it a job description, but it is more formal of a stipend in that there is criteria, and having a presentation, Marco and I had a meeting with WSTA and basically outlined that, and then we, of course, I don't want to say bargained, but we also talked about the cost and the amount of the stipend, so it was truly a partnership in that regard. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Marco and Amanda Divoldis.
Thank you, Norma. Good evening, Board. As a reminder, I came here in May, and we have a goal to build a 5-year technology plan. And when I presented, I mentioned that primarily the technology plan has to focus on teaching and learning. So from May up till today, I've been working with Cabinet, working with our teams to design this. Our interest is impacting first instruction. Our interest is not to encourage our teachers to find apps and figure out how to use them. So because of that, we had the opportunity to look at our coordinator of instruction technology position in the month of June. We advertised and we hired Miss Amanda Divoldis. So with her assistance and the cabinet assistance, we designed this, and we want to keep it as simple as possible. Our focus is instruction. It's not on technical. These people will not be techies. They're not going to be called upon to fix computers or fix my Chromebook or fix my projector. It's how do we build their capacity on first instruction. And if we do this well, the theory of change is that they're going to infect other teachers on their campus. Our goal is to have 2 at every K-8 campus and then 4 at the high school. At the high school, we're not looking for CTE, pathway, those type of teachers. We're looking for core teachers, English, math, science, and social studies, to provide the impact on how do we go about transforming the learning in the classroom. One of the things that we've done, we've reached out to industry leaders, these people that are going to be submitting their application starting tomorrow, are going to be exposed to what educational technology looks like, sounds like, and feels like from Apple's perspective, from Dell Education perspective, from Google Education perspective, and from Microsoft perspective. My interest there is to create tension. If you think of a rubber band and you put a rubber band, one in your hands, and you put the rubber band down here, if they begin to realize that they're a little bit behind, and if we can raise the stakes, that rubber band's going to cause a little bit of tension. The focus is instruction, not with techie, not with hardware. So what I want to do very briefly, I'll just go through a couple of slides so that the public can become aware of what the program looks like. Now, let's see, last time I was here, I had problems with this.
Do we need an ITL to help you?
Yeah.
Or wait.
There we go. So those are the details. The team, or the program's under the direction of Dr. Parson. After I met with the board in the month of May, Andy and I chatted, and we helped design this, and then we promoted it to where it's at today. Get to the next slide. That's the purpose. I won't read it to you, but you had an opportunity to look at it. And those are the qualifications. We're looking for permanent teachers. And those are the responsibilities. I'm going to go to the next one. And we have already established our meeting dates. The 19th is with Apple. They're going to be visiting our campus. October is going to be with Dell. November is going to be with Google. And we're looking to see where Microsoft can come in, either December or January. We'll have site meetings monthly. Again, they're already been scheduled. And then we're going to go out to the site. And this is different. We had the opportunity to go to Bridgeway Island last Friday. Their interest, their parents' interest, and Evelyn's interest is how do we get more Chromebooks in the classroom? And Mike, our technician there, invited Amanda and I, and we changed the conversation. It's not about hardware acquisition, it's how can technology advance to learning first of the employee, in this case the teacher, and then the students. So the homework assignment that we left with them was for them to do some action research. Go into the classrooms, see what's happening, hear what's happening, feel what's happening, and just ask. If you need to capture data, capture it digitally. Ask permission if you can use your phone, and then gather afterwards to reflect. And Evelyn's in the process of doing that. Is that the last slide? Nope. All the information is there, and it's posted up on our website, as well as a Google form. The deadline is there for that. And then I think I'm on, this the last slide? Got one more. Oh, there we are. That's the last slide.
The most important one.
Yes, the most important one. So if you have any questions about it, we're seeking your permission to move forward with this, and we would like to start.
Trustee Alcala.
Thank you. I do have one question. On the first page, you have all the schools listed, the 9 schools, and you have River City, but YOLO.
That's a great question. Our focus is River City, and we want to work on the core subjects there. We thought about YOLO. We didn't include them.
Is there a reason why?
That was a good question. We wanted to know. Yeah,
Or Washington Middle College, for that matter.
Right.
Well, we follow the same pattern because River City High School feeds into Washington Middle College is also bright, and we wanted to focus solely on the comprehensive high school. So that's the reason why we did that.
It just doesn't seem fair. Equitable, to have YOLO and
Washington
middle,
Middle.
yeah, Washington Middle. Because we are having all the other 9 schools, and they're elementary, so I just can't understand why we don't have YOLO.
Okay.
Is that something up for reconsideration?
It will be coming. What we're trying to do is build capacity in the existing staff members that we have right now. And so what we're hoping to happen is, for example, 2 staff members at River City would become the technology leaders. Over at YOLO at this point, we have 5 teachers, and we really wanted to build capacity there. The focus right now with Dr. Phillips and YOLO High School is to get everyone on standards alignment first, because they are new to the standards alignment, and so it's about capacity, bringing it on. We are not forgetting about YOLO, and we're not forgetting about Middle College and Bright. We just wanted to start this program to start building capacity first. But there will be instructional technology. I've already talked to Dr. Phillips about it, and also Sean O'Neill over at Bright is extremely proficient with instructional technology. So we talked about it as well, and because of his demographics right now, his size, he said, let me just work with my staff first. So it's all about capacity. It does not mean we are not going to service both YOLO and Bright.
Okay, so we're looking at next year for YOLO and Bright?
We are going to look at it. We want to start rolling this out and seeing what the interest level is, see how the training goes, and then we'll see how we're going to roll it out over there.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody? Any other questions or comments? If not, this is actually an action item, so Trustee, Vice President Pizzotti? Oh, with the plans to move it to other campuses in the future, are you okay with moving forward with this? Okay.
Second.
Wait, can I clarify what that statement was? We're approving this with plans, is that what you said?
With the clarification that there are plans, as outlined by Dr. Parsons, that they will move on to other campuses in the future.
Okay, and that might possibly be the 2 people at River City and then going out and supporting or whatever that might look like. Okay, okay, then I'm
Is
supporting.
that comfortable?
Great.
Okay. Are you moving again, Vice President Pizzotti?
Yeah.
And then second, Trustee Alcala? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
You have your program.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So moving on to LCAP, Dr. Parsons, you're back up at the podium. Local Control Accountability Plan revision, I should clarify.
Good evening. Tonight, we're bringing back the LCAP to the board for consideration for approval. The revision is threefold. First of all, this was done in consultation with the County Office of Education to ensure transparency to the Board of Education. These are technical changes, and so as we looked at it, there were some significant changes. So again, for transparency, we wanted to bring it back to the board. Significant technical changes, which means there were quite a few in 3 different areas, which I'll go over really quickly. So the board knows this revision has absolutely no changes in actions, goals, feedback from the public, from the board. This is about technical changes. Some of it had to do with our...
Substantive.
Correct. Yes. Thank you for using that term.
Non-substantive, yes.
And it happened after the Yolo County reviewed, their final review process ended August 21st. So it's only been a couple weeks, 3 weeks since they did the final review. And we met and looked it over and said, okay, we will take it back to the board. The technical changes, so the board is aware, consist basically of 3 different areas. Various items from the prior year LCAP did not transfer over on the e-template. And so we usually don't check what is transferred from the e-template from the previous year. So there were some things that were left off from our previous year, not the LCAP that we developed for the board approval. Secondly, a few of the budget resources did not align with the budget codes, the object codes that the board approved. For example, Title III would be like 4,300, and instead of saying 4,300, it said 4,000 to 4,999. Okay, but it actually should say just 4,300. So things like that. or LCAP supplemental is 1,000 to 3,999, and we added in the LCAP as 1,000 through 5,000s. That would include general fund. Therefore, we needed to correct some of those object codes. Thirdly, although included in all the goals and actions, we put the demonstration for increased or improved services that needed to be stated. Those were all in the goals and actions, but they were not explicit enough in the last part of the LCAP, which is a demonstration of increased or improved services for unduplicated pupils. So you'll see that on pages at the end of the LCAP from 175 to 181. That is where we have listed all the services for the supplemental concentration grant funds, which came to about $9,500,000. So we wanted to put that in there to make sure it's explicit, primarily for the advocacy groups that look at our LCAP. So we wanted to really be explicit in that last part of the LCAP. And with that, you have the copy of the finalized LCAP to be approved by the board, and the county has already said as soon as you approve it, the LCAP is approved and will be sent to the State Department.
Great. Of Education.
Sorry, of Education.
Any questions about the revisions, especially that last piece, which is, I think, a lot of advocates do look at the concentration grants and our
Absolutely.
services to unduplicated. You're pointing to, no? Do we want to take a minute to review it? I think it looks good. Thank you so much for it. Any other questions? If not, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Clerk Jackson moves.
Second.
Trustee Alcala seconds.
Thank you very
for
much.
your work on this.
All those.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's moving so smoothly. All right, so we're moving on to board governance. Adoption of resolution number 1920-02 for the opposition of the proposed federal rules to cut food benefits. Superintendent Luna.
Thank you, President Wong, Board of Trustees. This particular resolution was brought to my attention in regards to some federal legislation that is being proposed. And when I saw and realized the impact that could potentially happen to our district, I felt it important enough for the board to be aware of what the proposition would, how it would negatively impact our district. So in terms of our students who qualify and are eligible for free or reduced price meals, we currently have about 5,656 students in our district alone, which is about 75% of our student population. With this proposed federal legislation that is being discussed and moved forward, it could potentially really impact our families and our students in regards to insecurity of their own food here in our school district. So we are bringing it forward to the board for awareness. And there is a resolution that is being passed around and shared with different school districts. So I have attached that for the board should you would like to approve the resolution and have Washington Unified School District represent the voice opposing this particular set of federal rules that will negatively impact our children.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or, well, I have comments. Thank you for bringing this.
No, I'm just saying, we're all
Yeah, I think we're all.
We said
of like
federal,
mind on
opposing
this.
federal, and everybody just started nodding their head, I see. Irregardless of that, I think there's a couple of things. We believe in the securing food for our, food security for our 70% free and reduced lunch, and that would negatively impact how we run programs, especially when one of our WSEA leaders actually allowed us to apply for the community eligibility program, which would actually really negatively impact. This rule would also actually possibly create another barrier, bureaucratic barrier, to actually our schools being eligible for that program, which we applied for a little while ago.
It's just last year.
Was it last year?
Yeah, it was
So
implemented
just last year. So that's one issue, because then you would imagine that during registration, you'd actually have to manually ask and verify everyone's income at the front door of their school. And I don't think that's actually something that families would, there's a lot of barriers when people who are living in poverty have to go through. And so that's another thing. So food insecurity is one of those things. And I don't ever believe that somebody should actually prove how poor you are to be eligible for a program. So the fact that we have in place in the state of California that we can actually do direct certification for this and just feed our kids and our families, I think that's a really wonderful thing. The other thing is, as many of you know, that we are a concentration grant district. And so with the potential possible loss through bureaucracy, we could actually lose funding if our numbers decline, so of that unduplicated count. So that's another reason why this is important, in addition to the fact that we just oppose the federal rule. So those, I guess, we want our families fed, and so, but we also believe in the efficiency of direct certification. Do we have any questions about that?
No.
All right.
Agreement.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
just had a quick question. Do
Yeah,
we know
oh,
how many people, or how many other school boards are doing this?
My understanding is we might be the first to adopt.
So we should maybe also ask.
And blast the hell out of it?
Right.
We should blast the hell out of
And I
it.
was going to say, the California School Board Association should be made aware of this. Michael
We-
Anadon should,
So we,
propose this.
the school board, the AXA and CSBA submitted their letter and resolution yesterday.
Okay.
And so we are not following suit. I think that we just had to wait till the board met to adopt this. And so they have already submitted their letters, and as many school districts out there who can actually add to the conversation. It's not normally, I think when they were trying to do this in Health and Human Services, they didn't understand the impact on ESEA and the funding formula that is driven in the education finance system. So the more school districts, the more friends that you have and other school districts who can adopt this, I think the better it is. Because again, fundamentally, our funding formulas are based on this, not only in California, but the federal monies that we get as well.
Great. I'll make sure Latino School Board Association gets this passed.
Please. So with that, if you're okay, I'm going to move this for a vote.
Second.
Vice President seconds. All in favor? Oh, it's a roll call vote. So Clerk Jackson.
Aye.
Roll call.
Aye.
Trustee Kirby Gonzalez.
Aye.
Vice President Pizzotti.
Aye.
Trustee Alcala.
Aye.
And I too vote aye. Thank you so much for bringing this
Thank
forward.
you, trustees.
And to Vice President Pizzotti's point, we should really blast this far and wide in terms of taking a stance for our families. So, thank you. The second is the nomination for CSBA 2019 Directors at Large, African American, American Indian, and County. So I don't know if any of the board members have any suggestions or have been approached by anybody to nominate anybody for these positions. And we're all, they're open, so. No? Nope. Super.
I would nominate you.
You would nominate me. Thank you. Is that a serious nomination?
Yeah, no, absolutely, if you've got the time.
If I have the time, I will respectfully decline because I think other people with lived experience may actually be better suited for the at-large position. And unfortunately, I am unable to apply for the county at-large position because I am not at a county board of education. So we don't have anything. If we do not have any nominations in these areas, then I will.
Or any interest? Is anybody
Doesn't have
interested,
any
or is
interest is a
anyone
better question.
heard of
Is anybody
somebody?
interested? Okay, no?
Don't know enough about it.
Okay.
Don't
Do we
know
need
enough.
to have this ratified by the board?
We do.
Is there a deadline?
What is the deadline, Superintendent Luna? I don't recall.
The deadline for the nomination form from the board is to be sent by Saturday, October 5th.
Okay, so we have another board meeting before then if we want to think about, or
All right.
I could possibly reconsider. Thank you for your trust in me. And so.
Would you like us to put this on the next agenda?
We'll hold over
If anyone on the board is interested, I think that would be good.
Okay.
Or if there's anybody else in Sacramento area that you feel would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So moving on to Q3, revision to the board bylaws, 9220. Superintendent Luna, I believe this has to do with our changes to district elections.
Thank you, President Wong, Board of Trustees. This evening, we are bringing the revision to Board Bylaws 9220. This particular board bylaw describes the voting and election cycles and processes for the Washington Unified School District. With the changes that the board has made through the processes of the California Voters' Rights Act, the language needs to be revised prior to the November 2020 election, and we're bringing it forward today so that we just take care of it and we don't forget about it. So if you will see, the first page or the board bylaws is where all the changes are. It is under electing board members, and the language that has been added to represent our California Voter Rights Act changes to by area trustees is this. The district is divided into 5 trustee areas. Each seat on the board shall be held by an individual who resides in and is elected by registered voters residing within a single trustee area. Notwithstanding this requirement, board members elected prior to 2019 shall complete their current terms. And you see the strikeout language of one sentence, which is board members may reside anywhere within the district's boundaries and shall be elected by all voters in the district. So those are the changes being made for the revision to this board bylaw.
Any questions, comments?
I'll move the changes.
Okay, Vice President Pizzotti moves.
Second.
Trustee Alcala seconds. All in favor? Is it a roll call? Nope.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Board bylaw is adopted. Thank you. We are going to move on to board and superintendent comments. Trustee Alcala, we will start with you.
Okay, thank you. We'll actually be attending later in September a NALEO Educational Governing Conference. I won a scholarship. From NALEO, which is the National Association of Latino Elected Officials. It's going to be held in Chicago, so I'll be bringing back information for the board. And then this sort of begins a busy season for me because I do a lot of volunteer high school voter registration. And I'm hoping to get into River City, but actually have a new format now. I used to go into the classes and talk about civic engagement. We would register the students. But now what we're doing is we're actually, in order to institutionalize it, what we're doing is we're working with the leadership classes. And we're having the students themselves talk about why voter registration is important, why civic engagement is important. So I'm really looking forward to this being another year. We have our young future leaders engaged, and with the very important election coming up in 2020, whether it be a national or local elections that are coming up, it's really important for us to hear their voices and perhaps even be voting for them in a few years. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Kirby Gonzalez?
Okay, thank you. I think by now we have all gone to some facility meetings, and I echo the statements that were made earlier that the facilitators that I've seen have done a fantastic job. They have a great setup, and so I really appreciate the way that it's there, and I think the dialogue is so very important. When you vote online, which is valued, so please vote online for the facility plan, but there's something different that happens when you're in a room and you're talking with one another, and you might bounce ideas off, oh, I didn't think of it this way, what about this or that? And our attendance is very low. And I look at that room and I think of the amount of staff time and money and resources that went into these meetings. And so I really encourage people to come out because you do get value added when you're in a room working through this data than you do when you're at your computer. And I think that they're really important meetings to be in. I think 4:30 is a hard time, but as we talked about, Clerk Jackson and I talked about just yesterday, is you can bounce into these meetings. I mean, they very much are a workshop type model, and so I don't want people to feel hindered if they can't get there at 4:30, because they can certainly come later and give their input. And then I want to make the point that when we do make these decisions in this room and support these big plans that are also expensive plans, that we have the full support of administration and that takes precedent. And so I know there was a staff meeting the other day, there was a conflict in communication, and I think those are the type of days where you say, you know what, we have a master plan that's going to be here for years and years to come, and this staff meeting today is going to be working with these expert facilitators to do this. And we're going to cancel our staff meeting today. Not that they're not important and they don't have a lot of important things to do, but the communication that's happened, I think, in missing some of these voices, we are told that they will be made up, but there's a lot of resources that go into that. So that is my feedback with that, because I really do value them, and I am excited about the way that they're set up and the work happening, and to attend more. I wanted to bring up the point too, as we look at how we support school sites. I know that the law was passed, it was brought up earlier tonight, AB 72, that we're not suspending for willful defiance. And we know that we want to keep our kids in school and to be at school. And so supportive of that piece of it. But teachers still, there might be a time where a student is disruptive and in the classroom is not the right place to be for that student and for the other children. And there are, it does allow for a 2-day in-house piece, and so I think we need to support our principals in that, our administrators and outreach specialists, because if a child is removed from the classroom, where are they going to go? What does that space look like? What are they going to be doing? I want to be aware of that I don't want to just push them off, because there's some pieces that go into that. And then we did attend Board President Wong and I, a CSBA meeting to give feedback on the dashboard. As they look at going to a growth model, the state board looks at going to a growth model where instead of comparing students to the year prior, so a totally different group of students, you have a group of students in 5th grade that take an assessment, and then you compare them to a group the next year and how they did on that assessment. So instead, a growth model compares the same student with their data the next year. There's a lot of benefits to a growth model in looking at a child. But there's also some hindrance. Whenever there's a high-stakes test, for example, it's not the same test. It's not a pre and a post in the same way. The test is very different in 3rd grade and 4th grade and 5th grade. And also, I would argue it's not the best measure anyways. So I'm not a proponent of any high-stakes testing that's used in a high-stakes way to judge our schools. However, I was glad to be part of that conversation. I think there's some good pieces there. And also, I appreciated having the wins tonight. I'm excited for things that are coming up. I'm so excited to hear about the Sunday training and the more work that's going into our students to serve them who do have dyslexia. I saw a picture of one of my Girl Scouts. I'm a Girl Scout leader, reading a book, just having her book open and reading it, and that wasn't happening before. And just having parents and kids feeling really successful, there's already benefits showing up, and I'm just so grateful for that. And last thing Clerk Jackson brought up as a future, this goes with the future board agenda item, but I just want to make sure I say it publicly so that there's no surprises. For staff, Clerk Jackson brought up the PBIS, really the MTS umbrella, but in that with PBIS, what I'll bring up in the future is, and I've seen this for years, are behavior charts, very visible behavior charts for students. And then when I see that in rooms, I wonder a lot of things. I wonder, is the research known on this? Because it's pretty clear that visual behavior charts are not good for kids. I feel it as a parent. hearing about students who might not be doing well in school and knowing how they did on that behavior chart. And I feel like it goes against our policy of confidentiality with students and having a safe learning environment. So when we have that meeting and we talk about PBIS, I want to talk about visual behavior charts for a class where everybody's behavior is shown and how we can make changes against that. Thank you.
Okay, Clerk Jackson?
In light of all the discussion tonight that's taken place with with September being Suicide Prevention Month, next month is actually Bully Awareness Month. And I think it would be great if there's something that we as a district can do to kind of promote that. I know that several of the PTOs have already gotten things in the works as far as getting bracelets for their different campuses. I know that's something that we voted on the other night at Bridgeway's PTO meeting. I believe it's also Southport is also doing the same, something similar. And that it may be in a gesture of solidarity with those schools, if the district could possibly pick up the cost for those. I don't know. If we have the funds available to, so that way that the PTOs can actually use the funds that they would use to purchase those types of bracelets and things like that to promote the bully awareness on that campuses. They can use that money for something else would be great. And then we can kind of encompass all the schools in the district to get on board with that. Because as I've come to realize over the last several weeks and speaking with several people that I know, there is a pretty severe bullying situation going on in our district that needs to be taken care of. And that would be very good to kind of nip it in the bud. Because I know the parents that I have spoken to are not very happy with the way things have been handled for various reasons. And it's kind of leaving the alternative being, well, the kids take care of things themselves. And as much as we would not like that to happen, sometimes the best thing you can do to a bully is, well, I'll just leave it at that. So I would like to put that out there and propose that. If there's something that we can do to kind of coordinate an effort with our schools in promoting Bullying Awareness Month next month. And I wanted to publicly thank Principal Billingsley for her very timely response to the concerns that we had addressed at our previous board meeting in regards to the current status of the situation of athletics over at River City, and the report that she sent out was fantastic. And if we could, just make sure that doesn't fall to the side and continue to get follow up on that and find out what our next steps would be in dealing and handling those issues would be great. And to echo Kirby Gonzalez's comments about the forums, I think I would concur that I believe that the start times are a little tough for folks to get out. 4:30, it's kind of hard for folks to get there directly from work, and maybe that would different times would possibly help our attendance problems at some of the sites. Maybe it wouldn't. I don't know, but that. Not mean withstanding that I think it's important for people to understand that, this is a plan that's going to be put into place that we're developing so that we kind of get off the hodgepodge list of repairs and things like that. So with that way we can develop a model that we can follow for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, in a replacement schedule for things instead of waiting for things to get so far out of hand. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, the roof is leaking at Westmore Oaks. Well, we need to fix it, type of deal. Well, if it's on the schedule, then it's easier for us to be able to budget for those types of things. And so the parents, you play a huge role in that, because you're the eyes and ears on the campuses throughout our district, and you guys may see things that we may not be privy to, or that people who are going through and walking through the campuses and trying to develop this report that they may not be privy to or may overlook for whatever reason. And so if you can only come for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, come and give us your input, because your input is extremely important and is extremely valuable, because, you know, you're seeing things from a different lens than what we are. And lastly, again, I've gone ahead and had some conversations with my administration, and I would like to extend the invitation to Superintendent Luna and whomever she chooses to bring for a site visit to Cal Middle. Well, it has been approved. We just need a few dates of when you guys would like to come, and maybe who's coming, because obviously I think if you're going to be there, then we're going to want to make sure that our superintendent's aware, so that if he wants to be there, he can come tag along as well. So, but you're more than welcome. We just need to get together and get some dates set so we can get that going. I think we're rapidly approaching the point where things are starting to roll, and it would be a good time for you guys to go ahead and come. And if you also would like to visit, we want to go ahead and extend it to some of the elementary schools. I can go ahead and contact the principal over at Sutterville and try and set something up there as well. So just let me know how you guys would like to proceed, and we can move forward with that.
Okay. Vice President Pizzotti?
It's going off. There we
There
go.
it is.
Okay. Yeah, so to piggyback on the facilities meetings, I attended 3 so far. The first one was Westmore Oaks, Fallbrook campus, YOLO, the district office, which was very well attended, actually. There was quite a few people there. Thank you for rallying people up, Pat. We appreciate it. Then the next one was Westfield, and the next one was Bridgeway, which were definitely more intimate. There was probably, maybe 4 or 5 people that attended each. So in those cases, maybe the times didn't work best for people, but we also can't make every single time perfectly available, and people can come in, as we did have at Bridgeway and Westfield, people come in late to express their points of view. So it did pan out in the end, but I think maybe they saw the 4:30 start time and they were initially put off by that, or they answered the survey question online feeling like, okay, that's my input. I put my time in online instead of actually coming to visit, because people are busy. It's not very easy for everybody to get up and put things in life on hold to come attend the facilities meeting, especially when it's close to dinner time and so forth. So, let's see. Oh, I just wanted to say, SB 276 was signed, thank God, finally. It was a big deal for, I think, a lot of us who work in
SB 276?
I was going to say work in the Capitol, but SB 276 makes it a little more difficult for, I shouldn't say difficult. It provides more regulatory observations on medical exemptions for vaccinations. And so I am, from somebody who works in the Capitol on a daily basis, the climate there was a little bit crazy, to say the least. I wanted to say thank you for your information, Sue, about the dyslexia classes. I would love to be able to sit in on one if that would be possible. I think that would be, I didn't get diagnosed until I was in college. So it's something that is, very near and dear to my heart. And I wasn't diagnosed with ADD until my daughter was. So things that get missed, are things that I would like us to be able to prevent at the earliest possible stages. So if there's any possible way I could, sit in on a dyslexia class, I would love to be able to see what we're doing. That would be wonderful. I just wanted to state the dates again for the Out of Darkness Walk, which is September 28th at 10 a.m. Registration starts at 9, and it's on the west steps of the Capitol. And that goes to the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. So all the proceeds for that walk benefit them. Then I wanted to piggyback on what Clerk Jackson said about Principal Billingsley really got to us in record time, a pretty detailed report about the state of our athletic program and our equipment and uniforms. And I would love to hear like regular status updates as to where are we in the process of, say, replacing the gym equipment that is being held together by duct tape or things of that nature. That those things are, really stand out to me, especially in the weight room. All our kids use that, and it's very important that our kids at least have safe equipment to work out on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with that, I just want to say thank you to all our staff for the wonderful jobs that they do in putting together these board meetings. They put a lot of time and effort into it. And Director Grote, welcome.
Welcome. Well, thank you for everybody's comments. I'll just continue on with my experience at one school, which I thought it was normal, but it was Elkhorn, so it was fabulous. I know I personally reached out to parents who showed up, and I joke, I think it wasn't a 10-page dissertation, but really it was a 10-page dissertation coming in prepared to tell the facilitators what they wanted, so I thought that was pretty phenomenal. But I think that both Clerk Jackson and I know these parents, and so we're not shocked. We are absolutely not shocked that happened. And so thank you for that. But one of the things that the parents did say that was effective is that Principal Garcia sent a message really indicating that, hey, we are the second oldest campus in the district and you should show up. And so that really kind of spoke to some parents saying, one, we didn't realize that we were the second oldest. And so that was actually, I think, what spawned some of the organizing from the parent perspective, and then the follow-up. So I would encourage board members who have relationships with parents and PTOs to actually reach out and remind them that, hey, your voice is included, is important, and showing up is one way. But if you can put it together, not to shame other campuses, but put together a 10-page dissertation of sorts, I think that helps the process a little bit. And so really, really impressed with the Elkhorn community there and what Principal Garcia has been able to do. With that said, actually really impressed with a lot of our schools. So back to school night. I know I'm a Southport parent, so I will leave that there. And so really impressed with what Principal Ainsworth has been doing. I know that scores aren't everything, but his approach to kind of growth isn't about test scores. It's about what the kid needs, right? By name and by need, looking at the data and encouraging them and making sure that they have a positive school climate to learn and grow, right? And so that's what I appreciate, and the gains there have shown. The other campus that we visited was Riverbank, so welcome. Principals, Rob Patterson and Rodriguez, and I do love Riverbank because there's so much passion there from the teachers and the community, and I know that we were at the tail end, but there's something just special about our schools who often are neglected and overlooked, and I think that was it was really special to talk to the teachers and how dedicated you both are, coming as not new to us in the district, but new to that community, and it was really special to see those relationships there. But we also, talked to some teachers, and awesome. And it was really great. Again, I'm just amazed. I'm amazed at what you guys deal with every day, and I think that as a good reminder I had a long conversation with the teachers about the trauma that is present in our kind of a certain number of schools, and kind of the need to invest more intentionally around what is trauma-informed practice, trauma-informed communities, all of that in some of our schools, right? And it helps support not only our teachers, but our administrators who are actually helping lead and hold that space for our social workers, outreach workers, bus drivers, and others. So it's not just one group, it's all of us together. So appreciate that. We also, Trustee Kirby Gonzalez and I did our annual face painting with our girls at the Labor Picnic. Yes. And so that was, that's always very fun, and got to take pictures with our WSTA partners there as well. And so that always a good time. And what did you say? Your daughter says it's the funnest place on earth? So every single year. But I think it's also because can I say that we let them run around a little bit because we love the community so much. We trust that our kids are okay running around Fairy Tale Land with our union brothers and sisters. So the other thing is, yes, thank you so much for, really appreciate your voice last week at CSBA when we were able to inform CSBA of the submission was yesterday, huh? The comments about an alternative method to actually evaluate school progress. So definitely appreciated those comments. And for those who, one of the questions that I received at the end of the Elkhorn meeting was, well, you have this plan, how are you going to pay for it? Right, so the other thing I said, well, we have to figure out and prioritize in December, and we'll figure that out. One of the things that I'm really excited about, another bill I know for some of us who walk the halls of Capitol every single day and have not yet had any communicable diseases, and is AB 48 was finally negotiated with the administration, and that's a state bond to be put on the March ballot. And I think that Washington Unified School District will be in a good position if we get our ducks in order. But I know that possibly a future presentation may be forthcoming, assuming that it'll get signed. And so I think it's really smart of us to be able to, of the board together, that we all agree to have a master plan that will end in December, so that we can tee up ourselves for a March bond that's a state bond and not necessarily borne on the backs of our local residents, because I know that that's been a conversation that people have been concerned about, but that's a different opportunity. So really excited about that, to have really just a lot of foresight of a 5, 10, 15-year plan that is informed by the community. So I just wanted to put that out there. And lastly, for those who are curious, I was requested by the State Superintendent of Public Instruction to be part of a panel next week for the CSU quantitative reasoning proposal, which would require another year of essentially, would it be, they say A through G, I feel like they're going to add a letter to gain admission to CSU. So I will be participating in that, and the impact on student learning here, and because I know that graduation requirements has been a very involved topic here. And so I'm excited to actually share my perspective and our perspective about what that means for our students who are in a concentration grant district, right? So those are my updates. And we're at 9 o'clock. Superintendent Luna? And to be clear, I'm representing my own opinions on this panel, not necessarily as a reflection of the board.
Excuse me.
Thank you, President Wong and Board of Trustees. My update tonight is oral. I have no PowerPoint. I just thought that I was thinking about what Trustee Jackson said at the last meeting, that we don't talk enough about all the things that are happening in our district. So I'm just going to talk about the things that are happening in our district, but not so much in the weeds or on the ground, but just the overarching projects that are happening and how Washington Unified is progressing. So there is a lot, and a lot is with capital letters that's happening in our district. And our whole district has really made great progress when we really look at all that has been accomplished from our staff and our students. In curriculum and instruction, we are much more standards aligned, and our resources are generated, more importantly, from the experts in the field, from our teachers. That's what makes it sustainable instead of just purchasing and purchasing. Secondly, our professional learning and training has changed. We have moved away from the old-fashioned staff development. We now call it professional learning. Our employees have opportunity and access to training to deepen and expand their work for their kids and the organization. Our professional learning times, you hear about PLT on Wednesdays, they're getting better. And they're getting better because it's almost like a marriage. It's like a brand new dance where you have to really learn how to have good conversations and deep conversations with your colleagues. Thirdly, our specialized programs. Tonight, we heard about the journey and the work of our Special Services Department. There has been huge transformation in that. We really aren't too proud of some of the things that have the practices, because we see what has happened in the change of education. And the good news is that we're seeing what's happening in education and how the effects of K-12 is what our focus is for all students, and particularly students with disabilities. In social and emotional learning supports, Washington Unified really should be elevated in the state of California. We have invested in our LCAP for this. So tonight, we saw a small area of the complexities of social and emotional learning and what our families and students experience in today's kind of world. We're making progress. We're concentrating on training. We're equipping ourselves to know how to effectively and more meaningfully serve our kids and our families. We've talked a lot about our facilities. It's our future, and it's ongoing work. Our current facilities master planning sessions, they are going to continue at the sites, and I've taken notes about the time frame. Last I was told, there were hundreds of responses by the survey of people giving their input. I guess that's kind of how, in the busyness of life, people find that a little bit more common and a little bit more convenient. But at the same time, we really do want to hear directly from parents face to face. We have incredible partners with local organizations and our service agencies, and we saw some of that list tonight. Communicare, Victor Services, our Yolo County Health, Mental Health. All of those we could not do the deeper kind of services outside of school without our partners. So what I would say is, and I did write down from hearing Dr. Nguyen tonight, the culture and climate of our district. While it is work for 2 years, it's going to be work for the rest of the existence of Washington Unified. Because culture and climate and transformative justice and how we enter into those kind of conversations is not about the winds coming in, and it's not about us practicing transformative justice. It's not about that. Because really what we're going to learn in these 2 years from the work, it's about who we are as a people. Because who we are as a people is how we talk, how we treat people, how we love, support our students and our staff, how we interact, and what level of compassion, not feeling sorry for, but true compassion on all students, no matter what background and what level of life they're in. So what I would encourage us to think about is that while we hold the state's accountability system high on our radar, we have to. Most importantly, we need to concentrate on the journey that we walk every single day with our students. The journey is where the transformation's happening. The journey is where the growth is taking place. And every day our students come to Washington Unified, we want them to know that they're showing up for their future. They will be surrounded by caring adults to support them through their educational journey. So that said, that's basically my report tonight, because we've really been looking at not the dashboard per se as our target. It's not our target. Our target is every day that we are with our students, and what kind of instruction are we providing, what kind of resources are we using, and then how are we supporting them to be able to access that academic work. So that's the work that Washington Unified is doing. It's very simplified at this point. After 5 years, it should be simplified because we have done some mass lifting. So now we've heard the board talk about sustainability. Now it's about sustainability. We need to just do the work. So I'm excited to be here. I always say it's an honor to be your superintendent, and it truly is. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent Luna. We are now moving on to future board agenda items, and so we have, just as a reminder, S1 Board Policy and Parent Handbooks regarding cell phone use and dress code. There is another law on the books about to be possibly to be signed regarding cell phones as well, that could change, so we'll talk about that in the future. And review of moving towards an inclusion model. S3, review of MTSS and PBIS programs. I actually want to add, I think what may have dropped off is an update of the aftercare and education program. But I would also lump that into just an overall presentation of aftercare education, enrichment, and athletics as what we're doing from the hours of 2:30 to 6, right? I think that's been an ongoing conversation for all of us. So we can do that as part of our planning, and maybe it's a study session. The other thing that we need to talk about is our CSB, 2 days of CSB Equity Network. As a future study session agenda item, we have 2 experts coming in to help the board understand what equity means within this framework. And we were looking at October 24th and 25th. That's Thursday from 3:30 to 5. I'm just putting it out there as a study session, and then an equity walk at one of our campuses on Friday, October 25th. So well in advance to see if everybody can make it, because it's important for us to, as leaders, to actually be trained and look, go to our campuses and apply kind of an equity lens that I know that Trustee Kirby-Gonzalez and I went through on a campus, and I thought it was very helpful to look at that lens. So those are the dates we're proposing, but we can talk more about it on a future agenda item and that study session. I think that also I want to add, I keep on adding, I apologize for this, but it is part of our governance calendar that we need to have a study session about our budgeting and planning, right? So that is definitely on our governance calendar, and trying to figure out a time for that to kind of talk about our just re-solidify our priorities and what we want to make sure that we're funding and then in the future. So just somehow kind of work that in. And I know that in the past, we've just had presentations from cabinet about that and what you all are thinking moving forward. And hopefully, if there's anything that we need to do by the March 15th deadline, that we have the full conversation before we have to make that decision, because I know that we do not want to be in the situation where we were last year. That was a kind of a struggle. So we want to be well in advance, have those discussions well in advance of making those decisions. So. Anything else to add, or have we forgotten to add on the list? Nope. Okay. If not, then do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, wait, yes. Clerk Jackson.
Well, no, I just wanted to clarify, because I did mention it in my comments about the update from River City. So I don't know if we want to put that on as a
that's part of the
future board agenda item or not.
Yeah, I'm lumping up just aftercare education athletics, so.
Oh, okay,
what we're
I
doing,
missed the athletic parts, okay.
What we're doing from the hours after school, 2:30, whatever
Gotcha.
it is, to 6 p.m.
Perfect.
Which would include an update on our ACEs, so just kind of, I think, a more robust discussion of those.
Okay.
What's happening, because I think at that level, I think they're all coordinated.
Okay, I'm good.
Right? So, anything else? Now do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay,
I'll
Vice President. Okay, Trustee Kirby Gonzalez seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Smack it.